Yesterday, the news was buzzing with the latest update on the horror game. A player named Chin Jio had pulled off the impossible, completing 10 D-rank tasks and 2 C-rank missions. He performed so well that the government recruited him immediately, making him the 13th Grade 1 ghost hunter in the country. It's been 2 years since this global nightmare began, and people like him were now national heroes. I sat in the back of the sweltering school bus, eyes closed, listening to the radio report. The noise was starting to get on my nerves. I wanted to turn it off, but nobody was listening to me. My classmates were all talking about the news, their voices filled with a mix of envy and terror. "I wonder how they do it," one girl whispered. "In a place that terrifying, I wouldn't even be able to stand up. My legs would turn to jelly." "Those people are built different," a guy replied. "They're basically psychos. They're in it for the rewards. Life or death doesn't matter when there's that much money on the line." Another student chimed in, sounding hopeful. "We're all turning 18 soon. That means we have to enter the horror game at least once. I heard a rookie last year finished 3 F-rank tasks and sold his rewards for 100 million. He's set for life." "You're an idiot," a boy with a middle part snapped, leaning against the window. "If you go in thinking about money, you won't come back. Last time, 50 students went in. Only 20 came back alive, and half of them have permanent heart damage. That guy you mentioned just got lucky with the easiest tasks. For us, the only goal is surviving." The mood in the bus turned cold. Our counselor stepped in to calm everyone down, explaining that the death rate had dropped since the government started intervening. New players now had a protection mechanism. As long as you hit a certain threshold, even if you died in the game, you'd wake up safely in the real world. My best friend, Tang Ming, nudged me. He was a quiet guy with glasses, the only person I really talked to. "Chin, no, we should sign up together after this trip. If we wait to be forced in, we're dead meat." He was right. There was a huge difference between signing up and being forced. If you volunteered, you got the government's protection. If you died, you were just eliminated and sent home. But if the game chose you forcibly, no protection, no mercy. A total rookie could be thrown into a high-level death trap with zero warning. "What's the rush?" I yawned. "I'll sign up with you once I finish my business." "You mean looking for your parents?" Tang Ming asked. I nodded. "A year ago, my parents vanished without a trace. I suspected they were forced into the horror game, but the police found no record of them entering. I'd spent the last year obsessed with finding them, nearly dropping out of school until my older sister forced me to stay. I was losing hope. If they'd been in the game for a year and hadn't come out, they were likely gone. Tang Ming had actually booked this trip just to get my mind off things." Suddenly, the bus jerked. The tires screeched as we veered toward the guardrail. The driver managed to pull us back just in time, but the cabin was filled with screams. 2 students were thrown into the aisle. "Master, what happened?" someone yelled. The driver clutched his chest, his face pale. "I'm okay." My heart just spiked for a second. But as the words left his mouth, he coughed up a spray of bright red blood. He slumped over the steering wheel, unconscious. The bus swerved again, smashed through the concrete barrier, and plummeted off the bridge. We hit the river with a deafening crash. Up on the bridge, witnesses were screaming. Emergency teams arrived within minutes. They hauled the bus out of the water, but when they opened the doors, the interior was empty. The driver and the counselor were dead in their seats, but all 45 students had vanished. I woke up to a sickening smell, rotting meat, and old blood. I was in a dim, enclosed room with my classmates. We were all groggy, clutching our heads. Then, a cold, mechanical voice echoed through the air. "Welcome, players, to your first horror game. Here are the rules. You will be transported to a location based on the game theme. You must fulfill the needs of the customers based on your assigned roles. Note, the customer is God. Do not give them an attitude, or they might take something from you. An eyeball, perhaps. Or your tongue. Maybe your life." The voice continued. "The game lasts 7 days. Survive, perform well, and you will be rewarded. The theme for this game is the Underworld's Spring Restaurant." My heart sank. We hadn't signed up. We were being forced. "Good luck," the voice whispered. The world blurred. When my vision cleared, I was standing in a massive, opulent hall. The others were gone. Huge crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and red carpets lined the stairs. It looked like a five-star European restaurant, but the atmosphere was suffocating. A notification popped up in my vision. The restaurant opens in 15 minutes. Find a uniform in the storage room. Look sharp. A messy server ruins the reputation. Another warning appeared. Do not go above the second floor unless you have the strength to back it up. The guests up there are picky. If they don't like the food, they might decide to eat you instead. The prompt reminded me that while the customer is God, I could discipline anyone who tried to ruin the restaurant's reputation. I scoffed internally. Discipline a ghost? That sounded like a suicide mission. I looked around, trying to keep my breathing steady. I wasn't brave, but after a year of searching for my parents in the dark corners of the world, I had learned one thing. Panicking only gets you killed faster. I wasn't a hero, but I'd spent the last year searching for my parents in the darkest corners of the world. I'd learned one thing. Fear equals death. To survive, I had to play the part. I was a waiter now. I repeated that to myself like a mantra as I hurried toward the storage room at the back of the hall. The corridors were empty and eerily clean, as if they'd just been scrubbed. I pushed open the storage room door, and a wave of sweltering, stagnant air hit me. The place was a mess of junk. I flipped over a wooden floorboard and recoiled. Underneath was a tangled mess of hair attached to a bloody, mangled scalp. I fought back the urge to gag. I reached past the gore and pulled out a waiter's uniform. It was a standard black suit, but it smelled like a rotting corpse and was stained with huge, dark bloodstains. Wearing this for a day would probably make me vomit my own stomach acid, but I didn't have a choice. The restaurant's reputation was on the line. I pulled the slimy fabric over my skin and checked my status panel. Every player had one. It showed my stats: strength 20, speed 30, ghost power 0. But then I saw something that made me freeze. I had skills and a level. I had been coached for this, and I knew for a fact that normal rookies didn't start with skills. My panel had upgraded. I tapped on the first one, Demon's Eye. It allowed me to absorb negative emotions from others, like anger, to gain random rewards. The stronger the emotion, the better the prize. The second was Angel's Kiss. This one absorbed positive emotions, like gratitude or affection, for rewards. Both were part of a newbie gift pack. The third was the Eye of Analysis. By focusing my gaze, I could read a ghost's hidden thoughts or figure out the use of supernatural items. I realized then that I had a massive advantage. In a world of horror, I had a cheat code. I didn't linger in the heat. I turned and headed back to the hall. I had 5 minutes left. In the hallway, I spotted a familiar face. It was Lise Saruo, the English class representative from my school. I went to wave, but she turned her head away, her face pale and twitching with nerves. She was pushing a meal cart, already in uniform. As she turned the corner, I saw it. A faint, flickering shadow was glued to her back, following her every move. She was already dealing with the supernatural. I felt a pang of worry, but I couldn't save everyone. I had to get to Dining Hall 3. When I arrived, 2 others were waiting, Wang Yang and Lu Jiechi. They looked surprised to see me. Are we all assigned here? I asked. There are 9 dining halls, Lu Jiechi explained, her arms wrapped tightly around her chest. This place is massive. We're just the bottom of the barrel. Waiters, greeters, cashiers, cleaners, and chefs. We're the waiters for this floor. We take the orders and deliver the food. Wang Yang didn't say a word. He took a step away from me, his eyes cold. I could tell what he was thinking. He thought I was a clueless rookie who was going to get him killed. He didn't want any part of me. Ding ding. The bell above the door rang. The restaurant was officially open. The glass doors swung wide, and a bone-chilling wind swept in from the pitch-black night outside. Goosebumps erupted all over my arms. Figures shifted in the darkness. I heard weeping and scratching sounds right next to my ear, like something was perched on my shoulder. Business is booming. I joked, my voice tight. Look at that line. Neither of them laughed. They were frozen. The first guests drifted in, shimmering, blurry shadows that took seats at the tables. They didn't look that scary at first. Wang Yang and Lu Jiechi seemed to relax. Get out of the way, rats. A heavy, wet voice rasped from behind us. My hair stood on end. Lu Jiechi turned and nearly fainted. Standing there was a man who looked like he'd been run through a meat grinder and sewn back together with thick twine. He had 2 heads. One was skinless, a raw mass of muscle. The other was missing the top half of its skull, exposing a pulsing, gray brain. We scrambled out of the way. Rats was what they called humans here. We were pests to be stepped on. More guests poured in. One had a hollowed-out stomach with intestines trailing on the floor. Another had no eyes or nose, just a face covered in dozens of twitching mouths. A notification flashed. You have been assigned to Table 4. Complete the customer's request. Achieve an average rating or higher. Deliver 3 dishes to complete the F-rank mission. Ratings ranged from terrible to very satisfied. High ratings meant rewards. Low ratings meant punishment. I looked at the others. They'd clearly received their missions too. I've got Table 10, Wang Yang muttered. Table 6 for me, Lu Jiechi whispered. Table 4, I said, touching my nose. Good luck, everyone. I walked to a corner table. My customer was covered head to toe in bandages that were soaked in dark, oozing blood. He had a bouquet of roses on the table and a second cup of tea set out. He was waiting for someone. Sir, what can I get for you? I asked politely. The uniform was disgusting, but it was my shield. As long as I was working, the ghost usually wouldn't kill me. The bandage ghost didn't speak. He pushed the menu toward me. A single item was circled in red. Steamed human brain. Understood, I said with a small nod. Please wait a moment. As I turned to leave, I saw Lu Jiechi staring at me in shock. She couldn't believe I was being so calm. Her own customer was a ghost with a chest cavity that had split open like a giant mouth, revealing its rhythmic, beating organs. She looked like she was about to drop dead from terror. I followed the signs to the kitchen. It wasn't a kitchen, it was a slaughterhouse. Bloody carcasses were being hacked apart on heavy wooden blocks. The sound of the cleavers hitting bone made my skin crawl. I walked up to a chef whose facial features were twisted together like a piece of fried dough. I handed him the slip. Table 4. 1 order of steamed human brain. The chef tapped the menu, then tapped his cleaver against the counter. He leaned in, his voice sounding like dry leaves scraping against a grave. We're out of brains. I kept my face like stone. I didn't flinch. Seeing that I wasn't terrified, the chef's eyes flickered with a flash of surprise. He snatched the menu back, his gaze turning malicious. On the outside, I was calm. Inside, my heart was hammering against my ribs. I knew the deal here. Some of the ghosts working in this restaurant hated us, temps. They couldn't kill us outright because of the restaurant rules, so they tried to break us with terror. It was a game to them. I ignored his glare. I had one rule for survival. Do the job, follow the protocol, and stay invisible. A few minutes later, the order was ready. He slid a black clay pot onto the counter. I picked it up and started walking away immediately, wanting to put as much distance between myself and that chef as possible. But halfway to the table, a gut feeling stopped me. I needed to be sure. I carefully lifted the lid, fighting back the urge to gag as the steam hit my face. A notification pinged in my mind. My eye of analysis skill triggered. The prompt was grim. It told me a story of a man who didn't live long enough to see his girlfriend return. He had been skinned alive by a criminal, dying in agony. Human skin was the thing he hated most in the world. It triggered his most violent, painful memories. I looked down into the pot. There, mixed in with the steamed brains, were several thin strips of human skin. My blood ran cold. That chef hadn't just been rude. He was trying to get me killed. If I served this to the bandage ghost, he wouldn't just complain. He would tear me apart. But if I didn't serve it, I'd be failing my mission, and the chef would have an excuse to attack me himself. I stood there for a second, then slammed the lid back on. I turned around and walked straight back into the kitchen. I slammed the pot back onto the prep station. The chef looked up, his face twisting into a hideous, distorted mask. "You miserable little rat," he hissed. "You dare question my work? You want to die?" "I might be a rat," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. "But the guest is furious. He told me to give you one last chance. He said if you can't make a dish that satisfies him, he's going to eat you instead." The chef froze. He looked confused. Why wasn't I screaming? Why was I threatening him? "That's the great bandage lord at table 4. I continued, leaning in. Even the manager greeted him personally. "Do you think you can afford to offend him?" The chef's expression shifted from rage to genuine hesitation. In this world, rules felt like law, but power was the only thing that actually mattered. I'd heard stories of powerful ghosts devouring entire restaurants because a meal was cold. If the bandage ghost decided to eat the chef, the manager wouldn't lift a finger to stop him. "Wait," the chef muttered. He snatched the pot back. A few minutes later, he produced a fresh dish. No tricks this time. I took the tray and looked him dead in the eye. "Idiot," I barked. "Try that again, and I'll make sure you end up on the menu yourself." "What did you say?" The chef's face distorted so much his features were upside down. He looked ready to swallow me whole. "Those were the bandage lord's words, not mine." I lied smoothly. Then I turned and walked away. The chef was shaking with fury, but he didn't move. He couldn't be sure if I was bluffing or if the ghost at table 4 really was that terrifying. My heart was thumping so loud I could hear it in my ears. That last comment was risky. I just wanted to get a jab back at him, but I realized I was playing with fire. If he had snapped, I'd be dead. Suddenly, another notification popped up. * demons I triggered. You successfully provoked the chef ghost. Reward, 3 red dragons. *. I blinked. Red dragons? Sounds powerful. I checked my inventory and pulled one out. Something warm and heavy landed in my palm. I looked down and nearly dropped it in disgust. It was a used sanitary pad, soaked in blood. "Are you kidding me?" I muttered. This world was sick. I shoved the red dragon into my storage space, hoping I'd never have a reason to use it, and returned to the table. "Sir, your meal. Please enjoy." I set the pot down and opened the lid. The bandage ghost didn't use utensils. He reached in with his bandaged hands and began stuffing the food into his mouth. Halfway through, his body began to tremble. He looked up at me. Even though his eyes were covered in layers of gore-stained fabric, I could feel his gaze. It wasn't angry. It was hollow, mournful. He pushed a piece of paper across the table. It wasn't normal money or even funeral hell notes. It was a ghost coin, the true currency of this realm. They say money makes the world go round, but here, it keeps the ghosts from grinding your bones. "Thank you, sir," I said, bowing slightly as I pocketed the tip. When I got to a safe distance, I checked the value. 100. That was a massive tip. This guy was a high roller. Mission 1 complete. Rating, satisfied. Mission 2. Proceed to table 2. 2 more to go. I can do this. As I walked through the corridor, I ran into Lu Jiechi. She was carrying a tray, her face pale as a sheet. "Lin Yuan, you finished your first order already?" "Yeah," I said. "Heading to the second one now. You okay?" "I messed up a little because I was shaking," she whispered. "But the customer didn't kill me. I'm so scared." "Have you seen Wang Yang?" I didn't really care about Wang Yang. He was a bully back in school, and I didn't have the energy to worry about him here. "No. What about Tang Ming?" "I don't know," she said. "I saw Lu Lingling, though. She's a janitor in the West Wing. She said the janitor job is even more dangerous than being a waiter." I nodded, told her to stay sharp, and we parted ways. Table 2 was occupied by a couple. They sat across from each other, motionless. Their skin was translucent and crawling with what looked like maggots moving just beneath the surface. Their eyes were milky white, like dead fish. I went to the kitchen. The chef had rotated. This one didn't try to kill me. The service went smoothly, and I got a neutral rating. I didn't care about being perfect. I just wanted to stay alive. Most people failed because they panicked and dropped plates or insulted the ghosts. My nerves were different. I had this weird ability to stay detached, though I couldn't remember why. My memories of childhood were a blur, just fragments of my parents and an older sister in college. I finished my third order quickly. As I walked back to the lobby to wait for the shift to end, I felt the eyes of the other ghosts on me. They looked at me like I was a succulent piece of steak, but the uniform protected me. Suddenly, a heavy bell echoed through the restaurant. The shift was over. The ghosts began to filter out, leaving the place in a chilling, quiet gloom. I saw Lu Jiechi and Wang Yang walking toward the center of the room. We had survived the first day. Lu Jiechi looked like she had just been reborn. She was shaking, tears welling up in her eyes from the sheer relief of surviving. Wang Yang, on the other hand, looked grim. His face was pale, twisted with a mix of terror and suppressed rage. His right hand was gone. The stump at his shoulder was perfectly clean, as if a limb had been popped off a plastic doll. There was no bandage and, stranger yet, no blood. It was just an empty socket. He took my hand, Wang Yang growled, his voice a low, ragged rasp of grief. Look on the bright side, I said, glancing at him. At least he did it painlessly. In a place like this, the pain alone would have finished you off. Wang Yang glared at me, seeing me standing there without a scratch, still acting calm, even optimistic, made his blood boil. Why, he spat. Why didn't anything happen to you? Because I'm better at this than you, I replied simply. His face turned a deep, angry purple. He looked like he wanted to hit me, but he just stood there, trembling with humiliation. A broken Pinocchio puppet clattered toward us, its wooden joints creaking and snapping with every step. I am the supervisor of the East Gate of the Ean Spring restaurant, it announced. The three of you performed well today. At least, you're all still breathing. The puppet turned its hollow eyes toward me. Employee 3697 performed the best. 2 satisfied, ratings, and 1 neutral. You are the outstanding employee of the day. Here is your reward. 3697 was my ID number. A stack of ghost coins appeared in my hand, 300 in total. Lu Jiechi and Wang Yang received their pay as well, but they only got 120 respectively. In this game, hunger and fatigue were real. Ghost coins were the only way to buy food, though I suspected there were other, darker ways to eat if you got desperate enough. You worked hard today, Pinocchio clattered. Follow the signs to the dormitory. Get some rest. Tomorrow is a new day. Keep working hard. With that, the puppet turned and rattled away into the shadows. I'm so hungry, Lu Jiechi said, clutching her stomach and looking at me with pleading eyes. I remember seeing a vending machine around the corner. Let's go. I nodded. I was starving too. Even though I had only served 3 tables, the mental strain made it feel like I'd been working in a coal mine for 24 hours. We found the machine in a dark corridor. It wasn't a normal machine. The front was a giant, snarling ghost face. You could see the items through its teeth. There was beef jerky, compressed biscuits, and even Coke. Lu Jiechi practically drooled. It was the first normal thing we'd seen in this nightmare world. I put in 50 ghost coins for the beef jerky. Lu Jiechi spent 80 on some pickled cabbage fish. Wang Yang, clutching his measly 20 coins, could only afford a single compressed biscuit. When the food dropped, our hearts sank. The beef jerky was a palm-sized slab of moldy, rotting meat. The pickled fish was floating in pitch-black broth, and the fish itself had jagged fangs. Only the compressed biscuit looked normal, but it was tiny, half the size of a palm. It had shrunk. Why did I only get 20 back? I muttered, my face darkening. I had put in a 100-coin bill, but the machine only spat out 20. It had swallowed 30 of my coins. Lu Jiechi had been shortchanged 20. The food was garbage, and now the machine was stealing from us. Wang Yang, already pushed to the edge by the loss of his hand, snapped. He lunged forward and started kicking the machine. You piece of trash. You think you can scam me? I'll tear you apart. The vending machine suddenly roared to life. The ghost face on the front stretched wide, its eyes glowing a murderous crimson as it glared at us. Lowly rats, it hissed, its voice like grinding stones. You dare scream at me? Wang Yang collapsed to the floor, his bravado vanishing instantly. He couldn't even squeeze out a word. I realized then that in this world, everything could be a ghost. A machine that provided food for humans was never going to be normal. The machine bared its teeth but didn't attack. I found my voice and stood my ground. We are restaurant employees. We earn that money. Why are you cheating us? You should be glad you have anything to eat at all, the machine sneered. The rats who came before you used to beg me for scraps. What more do you want? Get out. Let's just go, Lu Jiechi whispered, pulling at my sleeve. Tell the Pinocchio supervisor. He won't care, I said, turning away. The machine was right about one thing. In this world, humans were at the bottom of the food chain. Survival was the only priority. For now, I wouldn't argue. But one day, when I had the strength, I would come back and make this machine vomit up every coin it owed me. Bring more money next time. The machine cackled as we walked away. If you're broke, you'll be eating dead rats. It was a clear threat. This ghost intended to bleed us dry over the coming days. We were furious, but we were powerless. We followed the signs to the dormitory, a grim, blackened building that looked like it had been abandoned for decades. In the lobby, a faceless ghost sat behind the front desk. It had no eyes or nose, just a wide, stitched-up mouth that curved into a chilling smile. "Restaurant employees," I said. The faceless ghost slid a key across the counter. "Don't go out after midnight." Its voice echoed in my ears. "If you open that door and something happens, we aren't responsible." I took the key and nodded. The hallways were long and silent, ending in a darkness so thick it looked like an abyss. There must have been 100 rooms here. I wondered where Tang Ming and the others were, but there was no way to check. Our room was 404. I turned the key, and the smell of damp rot hit me instantly. The room was tiny and contained only one bed. Lu Jiechi, being the only girl, looked awkward. "The three of us can squeeze onto the bed," I said, looking at her. "Or, if you're worried about decency, you can sleep on the floor." Lu Jiechi blinked, looking stunned. I think she expected me to offer her the bed out of chivalry. But this wasn't the real world. The floor was damp, crawling with unknown insects, and probably diseased. Sleeping there would ruin you for work the next day, and in this place, a bad day at work meant death. Wang Yang didn't wait for an invitation. He slumped onto the edge of the bed immediately. I did the same. Survival didn't leave much room for being a gentleman. Lu Jiechi looked at the floor, shivered, and nodded. She didn't lie down yet. She headed into the cramped bathroom to try and wash off the grime of the day. Wang Yang pulled out his tiny biscuit and started chewing desperately. I pulled out my beef jerky. It tasted foul, but I forced it down. Wang Yang stared at my meat, his dry biscuit clearly not enough to satisfy him. "Give me a piece," Wang Yang said. It wasn't a request, it was a command. "I'll pay you back tomorrow." "I don't have enough for myself," I said, tucking the rest of the meat into my pocket. "We're classmates," he snapped. "Can't you help me out?" "Would you help me if the roles were reversed?" I asked. "I'm not a saint, Wang Yang. I'm not giving away my lifeline to anyone." "Don't be a prick," he growled, his face twisting. "You've got 2 hands. Don't make me take the other one." I looked him in the eye and let out a cold, dry laugh. Wang Yang's expression flickered. He realized that the quiet kid from the back of the classroom wasn't a pushover anymore. He gritted his teeth, turned his back to me, and tried to sleep. Lu Jiechi came out of the bathroom a few minutes later, smelling slightly less like a corpse. She had finished her fish earlier. She grabbed a thin, moldy blanket and climbed onto the bed next to me, pressing herself against the edge. Late into the night, a cold wind whistled through the cracks in the walls. I was drifting in and out of a restless sleep when I felt something. A hand. It settled on my leg. Slowly, it began to slide upward. I snapped my eyes open. To my left, Wang Yang was snoring loudly, dead to the world. It had to be Lu Jiechi. Was she really trying something like this in a place like this? The hand grew bolder, crawling higher, cold and insistent. The hand didn't stop. It crawled right up to my crotch. I bolted upright. The bed creaked violently under my weight, the old wood groaning in the silent room. Wang Yang jerked awake, his face twisted with sleep-deprived rage. "What the hell? You sleepwalking or something?" he barked, his voice thick with irritation. Lu Jiechi rubbed her eyes, looking dazed. "What happened?" I stared at her. She looked like she'd just woken up. "What did you just do?" I demanded. "Nothing," she stammered. "I've been sleeping." I looked down at her hands. They were both visible, resting on top of the covers. My blood went cold. I believed her, because I could still feel a hand moving under the blanket, groping me. "Damn it," I hissed. "You've got some sick habits, Wang Yang. If you're lonely, touch Lu Jiechi, not me. Get lost." Wang Yang's eyes went wide. He reached under the blanket and grabbed a hand, thinking it was mine. "You're the one who needs to." He stopped. He pulled the hand out from under the covers, intending to shove it back at me. I held up both of my hands so he could see them. Lu Jiechi's eyes tracked my hands, then moved to the pale, lifeless hand Wang Yang was currently gripping. Her pupils shrank to pinpricks. She slammed her palm over her mouth to keep from screaming. Wang Yang's face drained of color. He was holding a severed, rotting hand. He froze, unsure whether to drop it or keep holding it. Slowly, he peeled back a corner of the blanket. A head was tucked into the mattress. Its skull had been split wide open by a heavy cleaver, which was still wedged deep into the bone. Holy shit! Wang Yang scrambled backward, kicking the blanket off the bed. The severed hand flew across the room, and the head rolled across the floor, stopping to look at us with a dark, hollow grin. Why is there a ghost in here? Wang Yang whimpered. I remembered what the faceless dorm warden had said. I turned to the others. Did either of you open the door? Lu Jiechi raised a trembling hand. After I finished the fish soup, I opened it just a crack to throw the trash out. You idiot! Wang Yang roared. Is your brain full of lead? Lu Jiechi started crying, whispering apologies as she curled into a corner. The head's long, gray tongue flicked out. Didn't you invite me in? You don't seem very welcoming. I think I'll just eat you all instead. The tongue lashed out like a whip, wrapping tightly around Wang Yang's ankle. He let out a desperate, high-pitched wail. Hey, I called out. I've got something much tastier. You want it? What? The ghost hissed. I reached into my inventory and pulled out the red dragon. With a flick of my wrist, I slapped the bloody sanitary pad right onto the ghost's face. This sacred relic reacted instantly. Thick white smoke billowed out as if I'd thrown acid on its skin. The head let out a soul-shredding shriek, its flesh melting and bubbling away until it was nothing but a puddle of foul-smelling black sludge. Wang Yang and Lu Jiechi stared at me, then at the empty floor, then back at me. Their expressions were a mix of horror and pure confusion. Was that a pad? Wang Yang stammered. You carry those around? I didn't bother explaining. I didn't care if they thought I was a freak. I just pulled my covers back up and lay down. Go to sleep. Wait, Wang Yang whispered, his voice hopeful. Does that really work? Jiechi, do you have any more? Are you kidding? She snapped, her face flushing red with a mix of shame and anger. If yours comes, save one for me, Wang Yang pleaded. Get lost. You're disgusting. The next morning, the biting cold woke me up before I could even process a grumpy thought. A chilling, high-pitched giggle of a ghost baby echoed through the room. That was our alarm clock. The restaurant opened at 6. We'd had exactly 6 hours of sleep. I pulled on the foul-smelling, grease-stained uniform, ignoring the damp sensation against my skin. Wang Yang was muttering to himself as he dressed, clearly shaken by the night before. Lu Jiechi was clutching a necklace, praying silently. I actually had some respect for her. Most girls would have crumbled by now, but she was still standing. We headed to the dining hall. Pinocchio was slumped in his chair, his head lolling to the side like a discarded toy. We're short-staffed today, he croaked. Each of you must complete 6 successful deliveries before you can clock out. 6 orders. Our faces fell. It wasn't the physical labor that worried us. It was the math. More orders meant more chances to run into a difficult customer who might decide to eat the waiter instead of the food. We all knew why we were short-staffed. Someone didn't make it through their shift yesterday. The Inspring restaurant was packed. Eerie shadows blurred across the room as ghosts took their seats, their expressions wooden and expectant. I walked up to my first table. The customer's face was a map of horrific burn scars, the skin melted into a shiny, charred mess. If a normal person saw him, they'd faint. Sir, what can I get for you? I asked, my voice calm and professional. The burned ghost pushed a checked menu toward me. I blinked when I read it. Sweet and sour pork ribs. It was a normal human dish. Do ghosts even eat this? One moment, please, I said. I took the slip to the kitchen. The chef glanced at the order and let out a contemptuous snort, but he started cooking anyway. When the plate was ready, he handed it over with a cold glare. If you sneak a bite, I'll cut your tongue out and garnish the next dish with it, he hissed. I know the difference between one meal and a lifetime of meals, I replied smoothly. As I walked down the hallway, I paused. I activated my eye of analysis. Analysis. In the final moments of a fire, he pushed a young girl to safety. He died, but he still remembers her. He used to make sweet and sour pork for her. Tequila cocktails were the drink they had the day they met. He isn't eating food. He's eating memories. I looked at the plate. An idea started to form. Instead of heading to the dining room, I doubled back toward the vending machine. The machine's bloody eyes snapped open, glaring at me. Human food, disgusting smell. Little rat, you hungry? Give me a bottle of tequila, I said. 80 ghost coins. The price tag says 50, I pointed out. The machine sneered. Buy it or get lost. You'll starve to death without me. Remember who's the master and who's the slave." I didn't argue. I flicked 80 coins into its gaping, toothy maw. A bottle of tequila tumbled out. "Go drink in a corner," the machine jeered. I ignored it and headed back to the table. I arrived just in time. "Enjoy your meal, sir," I said, placing the ribs down. The burned ghost didn't gorge himself like the others. He didn't spray filth everywhere. He took a single piece, chewing slowly, as if searching for something lost. Suddenly, his body began to tremble. A strange, guttural sound escaped his throat. I moved in. I poured a glass of tequila and slid it toward him. "Perhaps you'd like to try this with your meal, sir?" The ghost's charred face twitched. "This drink, was it the chef's idea? Or yours?" Acting without orders was dangerous. If I offended him, he'd kill me. But I didn't flinch. It was my idea. The burned ghost picked up the glass. Faint orange flames flickered across his blackened skin. If he hated the drink, those flames would turn me to ash. He took a sip. His entire face shuddered. It wasn't just the taste, it was the familiarity. A memory that had been fading into the fog of death suddenly snapped into sharp, painful focus. A sound of profound grief escaped him. The other customers ignored us, but the other waiters were staring at me like I was a dead man walking. After a long silence, the burned ghost looked up at me. His voice was raspy and broken. "Good," he said. "This is for you." The burned ghost slid a $500 ghost bill across the table. The surrounding waiters froze. Some of the ghost staff stared at the high-denomination currency, their eyes turning a blood-red color with envy. I didn't let my hands shake. I took the bill, gave a deep, 90-degree bow, and smiled. "Thank you, sir," I said. In my mind, the system's voice chimed in. *Angel's Kiss triggered. You have gained 3 favorability points with the burned ghost, Liu Kai. Reward, blood-soaked, bone-crushing hammer, *. A ghost artifact. In this world, anything stained with ghost energy could be used to fight back, though their power levels varied. I didn't pull it out immediately. I needed to stay professional. I cleared the table and prepared for my next delivery. Ding-ling-ling. The door swung open. A new guest had arrived. It was a girl with twin ponytails and pale, porcelain skin. She looked like a normal human girl, but the way the other ghost customers looked at her told a different story. They didn't look at her with the usual contempt they showed us. They looked at her with fear. She was a bound human. In this nightmare, some humans are possessed by powerful ghosts, creating a hybrid existence far more mysterious and terrifying than a standard spirit. As long as you didn't provoke them, they usually ignored humans. She sat at a window table, her legs, clad in white lace stockings, swinging back and forth under her lotus leaf skirt. An experienced ghost waiter rushed over, wearing his most flattering smile, to take her order. I looked away. I had work to do. 10 minutes later, I finished my second delivery. I received a satisfied rating, which made me feel a surge of relief. Between the burned ghost's tip and this, my daily earnings were already set to double. Suddenly, a commotion broke out by the window. The girl's food had arrived, a home-cooked dish and a dessert, tiramisu. She took a small bite with her spoon, chewing slowly, her brow furrowed in thought. The ghost waiter, confident in his service, chuckled. "This is our signature dessert, bloody agate. It's a gift from the house. If you're satisfied, we hope to see you again." The girl pouted. "Something is missing, and I don't like things this sweet." "No problem," the waiter said quickly, bowing. "I'll bring you another one right away." "No need," she whispered. She reached out her hand and made a pinching motion in the air. The ghost waiter's face instantly twisted into a mask of pure agony. His uniform exploded as his body began to warp into a mass of raw meat. He tried to scream, tried to run, but an invisible force crushed him. He was being folded into a ball. The girl snapped her fingers. Splat! The meatball exploded. Blood and gore coated the walls and floor. The other customers looked up for a second, then went right back to eating like nothing had happened. As my face went pale, I felt something cold beside me. A tattered teddy bear was standing there. It had black bead eyes that stared intensely at the girl. The bear was covered in patches, and a large gash in its side let clumps of cotton spill out. I recognized it. This was the restaurant manager, a being even higher in rank than Pinocchio. The girl looked at the bear and tilted her head innocently. What's wrong? She looked like a harmless child, despite having just popped a ghost like a balloon. I braced myself for a massive fight, but the bear spoke in a low voice. Guest, to show our apologies, your meal today is on the house. In the future, you will receive a 50% discount. Really? Then I'll come back tomorrow, she said, hopping off her chair. I hope tomorrow's chef can actually satisfy me. She turned and walked out. In the horror world, this was the only law. If you were strong enough, you were the rules. The day dragged on in a haze of gray light. There was no sun here, just an endless, gloomy twilight. Eventually, I finished my 6th delivery. I stretched my aching limbs and let out a long breath. I wondered how Lu Jiechi and Wang Yang were doing. I didn't like Wang Yang, but we were classmates. In a place where human life was cheaper than dirt, I hoped they were still breathing. A sudden, piercing chill crawled up my spine. It felt like a pair of eyes were pressed against the back of my skull. I spun around. Pinocchio was standing right behind me, silent as a grave. I finished my work, I said. You did well, Pinocchio replied. The next 2 hours are your free time. You are allowed to roam, but only within the restaurant grounds. Do not leave the premises. He vanished. If I was free to move, I wanted to find the others. I headed toward the back door. 10 minutes later, I reached a building used by the cleaning staff. I figured Tang Ming might be there. I pushed the door open. Inside the lobby, a hunched-over old woman was crawling on the floor, fumbling around with her hands. Grandmother? Are you looking for something? I asked. She didn't answer. She just kept groping at the floorboards. Was she looking for glasses? I looked down and saw something round and wet near my foot. It was an eyeball. I suppressed a shudder, picked it up, and handed it to her. Are you looking for this? The old woman took the eye and shoved it into her empty, black socket. It looked horrific, but she gave me a tiny smile. Thank you, child. It's no trouble. Can I look around? I asked. I'm a waiter from the restaurant. She waved a hand dismissively, rubbing her aching back. Don't wander too far. It's easy to get lost in here. She shuffled into a room. I headed upstairs. The second-floor hallway was long and lined with doors. Trash was piled everywhere, and the smell from the bathrooms was nauseating. I walked deeper into the corridor, hoping to find a familiar face, but the further I went, the darker it got. The hallway seemed to stretch into infinity. I frowned. This wasn't just a long hallway. Something was messing with me. Suddenly, a pair of pale, deathly cold hands burst out of the wallpaper. They grabbed my shoulders, trying to drag me into the wall. Where did this little rat come from? A raspy voice hissed from the bricks. Delivering yourself as a snack. More hands emerged, dozens of them, wrapping around my arms and legs. I'm a waiter at the restaurant. I yelled. In here, you belong to me, the wall ghost snarled. It didn't care about my job. Fine. Have it your way, I growled. I reached into my inventory and pulled out the blood-soaked bone-crushing hammer. I swung it with everything I had, slamming it into the wall. The blood on the hammer glowed with a dark light. Crack, the wall dented deeply. Thick, black ichor began to leak from the bricks. A piercing shriek echoed through the hall. Where did you get a ghost artifact like that? The wall ghost stammered, its voice trembling. The impact told me everything I needed to know. This ghost wasn't that strong, it was just a bully. I leaned in close to the wall and let out a cold, mean laugh. You think I'd come here without some teeth? Touch one more hair on my head, and I'll turn this entire wall into rubble. Do you believe me? The wall went silent and the hands retreated. Asterisk shadow of the demon triggered. You have intimidated the wall ghost. Reward, bone-setting nail, asterisk. I felt my confidence grow. I gripped the hammer tighter and looked at the spot where the face had been. Now, I said, I'm going to ask a question. You're going to answer. I decided not to kill the wall ghost just yet. It had been stuck in these walls a long time. It had to know things. How many humans are in this building? I asked. 20 came yesterday. The voice rasped from the bricks. For already dead. Did you see a guy wearing a headband? I pressed. Tang Ming loved basketball. Whether it was to look cool or just a habit, he always wore a headband. He was tall, thin, and wore red. The ghost's eyes, visible for a split second in the wallpaper, flickered. Oh, him. He's responsible for cleaning the toilets on this floor. But I think he's dead already. I didn't even have to ask why. The wall ghost pointed me toward the end of the hallway. Go look in the restroom at the very end. You'll see. I looked down the corridor. The thick, ghostly mist was clearing, revealing a path that looked like a throat leading into an abyss. I didn't leave immediately, though. I took out the bone-setting nail and placed it against the wall. With one heavy swing of my hammer, I drove it deep into the bricks. It went in like a hot iron through butter. The ghost shrieked in pure agony. What are you doing? Just making sure you don't try any tricks while my back is turned, I said coldly. If I come back safely, I'll take it out. If not, well, enjoy the pain. The nail acted like a slow-acting poison, burning the ghost from the inside. It cursed me, calling me a damn rat, but I ignored the screams and headed toward the end of the hall. The restroom door was deadlocked. A massive amount of malevolent energy seeped from the cracks, making the air feel like a freezer. Standing 10 meters away, I was already shivering. This wasn't a normal haunting. This felt like a gate to hell. Suddenly, a door next to me creaked open. A pair of eyes peered out from the darkness. I spun around, gripping my hammer, ready to swing. Don't hit me, a shaky voice cried out. I stopped. It was Xiao Yuexin, another one of my classmates. She was holding a broom, trembling behind a stack of shelves in a small storage room. You're a cleaner here? I asked. I wasn't surprised to see her. All the survivors from our class were scattered throughout this nightmare. Yes, she whispered, pointing to the boxes of documents behind her. I'm supposed to clean this room, but I'm terrified to go out. There's a ghost in the hallway that keeps us trapped in loops. A lot of students got caught by him yesterday. Don't worry about him, I said. I dealt with him. He won't be bothering anyone for a while. I looked toward the restroom. Is Tang Ming in charge of that area? Xiao Yuexin nodded, her eyes filling with dread. He's in my dorm. He didn't come back last night. He's been trapped in that black misted room for almost 48 hours. I think he offended the ghost inside. He's probably. She didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what she meant. Can I get in? I asked. The door is locked tight, she replied. The key is with the old dorm matron in the lobby. I wanted to ask her for it, but have you seen her eyes? Those bloody holes. I couldn't do it. I nodded. Thanks for the info. I'll go get the key. Lin Yuan, wait. Xiao Yuexin grabbed my arm. It's been 2 days. The chances of him being alive are tiny. That old woman is a monster. If you provoke her, you won't leave this building alive. I gave her a small smile. It's fine. Ghosts are actually quite reasonable if you know how to talk to them. She looked at me like I had grown a second head. Reasonable? In this place? As I turned to leave, she called out again, her voice pleading. Wait, can you help me with one thing? This shelf. I can't organize it. Every time I put something up, it gets thrown back down. My shift is almost over. If the matron sees this mess, she'll kill me. I walked over to the shelf and picked up a roll of tape. I placed it on the second rack. A second later, the tape flew across the room. The entire shelf began to twist, emitting a sinister, mocking laugh. Pale hands emerged from the wood, grabbing items and hurling them onto the floor. A shelf ghost. It was picking on her because she was human and helpless. She had been trying for 2 hours, crying the whole time, while the ghost laughed at her misery. I didn't say a word. I pulled out the hammer and the bone-setting nail. Thud! I drove the nail half an inch into the wood. Black smoke hissed out. The shelf shrieked. You human brat! How dare you prick me? The shelf shook violently, its wood splitting into a jagged, bloody mouth. I didn't flinch. I swung the hammer again. Thud! The nail went deeper. I'll tear you apart, the ghost screamed. My answer was another heavy blow. Black blood began to leak from the wood. The ghost finally realized I wasn't playing games. Its arrogance vanished instantly. Wait, big brother. Stop. Let's talk. If you hit it again, I'll vanish. I smiled thinly. See? Now we're talking. I'm actually a very easygoing guy. I turned to Xiao Yuexin. How much time is left? 5 minutes, she stammered, staring at the wall clock. I looked back at the shelf. You have 5 minutes to clean this entire room. If there's a single speck of dust, or if my friend gets punished because of you, I'm coming back to finish the job. The ghost didn't dare argue. It wasn't even a high-level spirit, just a minor haunting that fed on fear. Suddenly, The fallen boxes seemed to grow legs. They hopped onto the shelves, neatly lining themselves up. Within seconds, the room was spotless. I winked at Xiao Yuexin. Ghosts are like people. They bully the weak and fear the strong. You just have to be meaner than they are. She was speechless. I left her there and headed back down to the first-floor lobby. The old matron was coming out of her room. She was dragging two mangled corpses across the floor, heading toward a large industrial meat grinder. The sound of bones snapping filled the quiet hall. I walked up to her, keeping my voice polite. "Matron, I'm back." She didn't look up. She just kept feeding the bodies into the machine. "Matron," I tried again. "Can I borrow the key to the second-floor restroom?" I asked, getting straight to the point. "I need to use the facilities." The old matron stayed silent, acting as if I didn't exist while she worked the meat grinder. I hesitated for a moment, then reached into my pocket. "I'm willing to make a deal," I said, pulling out a few ghost coins. The matron's head snapped up. Her eye sockets were pitch black, the eyeballs were gone again. "You want to save that boy in the restroom?" I nodded. "Find my naughty grandson for me," she rasped. "Do that, and I'll give you the key." Relief washed over me. If she was offering this deal, it meant Tang Ming was still alive. "I can do that. Where is he?" "He's a troublemaker," she muttered. "He runs everywhere. Maybe the basement, maybe the rooftop, maybe some dark corner. You'll have to find him yourself. Stay right here, matron. I'll be back." I turned and left. If she expected me to wait, it meant the kid was definitely still inside this building. It shouldn't be too hard to track him down. "One more thing," the matron called out after me. "Find my eyeballs too." I headed back up to the second floor. As I stepped into the hallway, the wallpaper began to shiver and peel. That angry, muffled voice echoed through the corridor again. "Take the nail out. Do it now." I didn't stop walking. "Don't be in such a rush. I'm not done yet. Listen, the matron's grandson is running loose in this building. Do you know where he went?" "I don't know." "Now pull it out." "Fine," I said, turning to walk away. "I'll find him myself." "Wait," the wall ghost shrieked. The brat went to the third floor. "Now pull the nail." "Keep your shirt on," I replied coolly. "I'll pull it when I'm finished. I'm a human. I actually have a sense of honor, unlike you ghosts. Just sit tight." "Scram," the ghost spat. I didn't have time to argue. I sprinted toward the third floor. Up here, the darkness was suffocating. Even with windows lining the hall, the light from outside seemed blocked by an invisible barrier. The only sound was the rhythmic thud-thud-thud of my own footsteps. I wanted to call out the kid's name, but the oppressive atmosphere felt like a hand over my mouth. Thump, thump, thump. Something was bouncing on the floor ahead of me, getting closer. I gripped the handle of my bone-crushing hammer. A dirty, worn-out rubber ball rolled out of the shadows. A small boy, maybe 4 or 5 years old, chased after it. He picked it up and looked at me. His eyes were solid black, no whites at all. "Mister," he said, staring up at me. "Do you want to play ball with me?" I knelt down, forcing a friendly smile despite how terrifying he looked. "What's your name?" "I'm Xiao Xin." "Xiao Xin, your grandma is looking for you. How about I take you downstairs, and we can play there?" The boy pouted and shook his head. "No, I want to play now." He paused, looking at his ball. "Unless you get me a new ball. This one is too dirty." He tossed the ball into the darkness behind him. I looked around the empty, decaying hallway. Where was I supposed to find a toy in this hellhole? "Let's go downstairs first." I tried to coax him. "I'll find you a brand new one there." No, I want it now." He started throwing a tantrum, then suddenly stopped. He pointed a tiny finger at my head. "Mister, can I take your head off and kick it? Grandma used to give me people's heads to play with all the time." The hair on my neck stood up. This wasn't just a bratty kid. This was a lethal threat. If I weren't worried about the matron coming after me, I would have smashed him with my hammer right then. "My head isn't very bouncy, Xiao Xin. Tell you what, stay right here. I'll find you a ball nearby, okay?" "No, new ball now, or I kick your head." I felt a surge of genuine irritation. I really wanted to strangle this kid. My eyes scanned the hallway and landed on something. A plan formed. "Xiao Xin, look. I found one." "Really? Where?" "Right behind you." The moment the boy turned his head, I grabbed a fire axe from a nearby glass case. With one swift, brutal swing, I buried the blade in his neck. Thwack! His head popped off. There was no fountain of blood, just a clean break. The head rolled across the floor, stopped, and looked up at me with curious eyes. I smiled thinly. See? Now you have a ball to kick. I stepped forward and sent the head flying into the darkness with a powerful kick. The headless body didn't collapse. It started dancing around, waving its arms, and then chased after the head. Soon, I heard high-pitched, joyful laughter echoing from the shadows. The body came running back, cradling its own head. The face on the ball was wearing a wide, satisfied grin. Yay, Xiao Xian has a new ball. Convenient, right? I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. Whenever you want to play, just take it off. When you're tired, put it back. It never gets dirty and you'll never lose it. Thank you, big brother. He dropped his head on the floor and started dribbling it down the hall. I watched him play, my heart hammering against my ribs. I just hoped this simple-minded kid wouldn't realize how messed up this was later. Once he'd played enough, I led him downstairs, making sure he stuck his head back on his neck properly first. When we reached the lobby, the meat grinder was gone. The matron was standing there, her back hunched. Xiao Xian ran to her and hugged her legs. Grandma, this big brother is so nice. He showed me how to take my head off so I can play ball whenever I want. He pointed at me like he was giving me a gold star. My back was instantly soaked in cold sweat. Luckily, the matron didn't get angry. She looked up at me. I held out my hand. I found your grandson. And these, I said, handing over her eyeballs. She pressed the eyes back into her sockets and her mouth curled into a terrifying grin. She was actually happy. Good, she croaked. Take the key. Put it back on the table when you're done. A notification flashed in my vision. You have gained 3 favorability points with the matron. Reward, 10 points of ghost power. Ghost power? I checked the details. It seemed ghost power was the currency of strength in this world. It scaled with my physical stats, meaning my strength and speed were now enhanced. More importantly, it allowed me to use ghost items with much more devastating effect. Thank you, Grandma, I said. I grabbed the key and bolted for the stairs. My free roam time was almost up. I sprinted toward the restroom at the end of the second-floor hall, but as I ran, the corridor seemed to stretch. The black mist ahead wouldn't clear. I stopped and growled. Do you want another nail in the wall? The wall ghost's voice echoed out. You're going into that restroom? Is there a problem? There's a ghost in there, the wall ghost said. The one holding your friend. She's not like me. She's much stronger, harder to deal with. I hesitated. I only had 4 bone nails left. If this ghost was on a different level, my hammer might just be a toy to her. How much stronger? Not much stronger than me, the wall ghost admitted. I relaxed. Oh, then I'm not worried at all. The wall ghost hissed in rage, clearly insulted. She hanged herself in there. That's her domain. Your little hammer and nails might hurt her, but they won't stop her. You'll just end up hanging next to your friend. You sound like you have a better idea, I said. Lure her out here, the ghost whispered. Bring her into this hallway, and I'll help you finish her. I narrowed my eyes. What's your angle, pal? Ghosts helping humans is like a wolf offering to guard a sheep. My only purpose for existing, the wall ghost said flatly, is to kill that bitch. So you two have a history? The thing in that bathroom. The ghost began. He was a murderer. The wall ghost's voice trembled with a hatred so thick it felt like it was dripping off the wallpaper. In his life, he killed over a dozen people. He raped and murdered my girlfriend. Then, he hacked me into pieces, stuffed me into this very wall, and poured concrete over my remains. I stayed silent, listening to the raw pain in his voice. Later, the ghost continued. The police surrounded the building. He knew he was trapped, so he went into that restroom and hung himself. I believed him. That kind of rage is hard to fake. Can you actually beat him? I asked. In this hallway, I am invincible, the wall ghost hissed. I couldn't help myself. Then how come you couldn't beat me? The wall went silent. He had no answer. He was probably just as confused as I was. Maybe it was the human bone nails, or maybe it was the blood on my hammer that perfectly countered his energy. Whatever it was, he knew that if I hadn't stopped, he would have been erased from existence. Fine, I said. I'll trust you this once. Despite my words, I didn't take any chances. I pulled out another bone nail and hammered it into the wall with a loud thwack. You, the wall ghost roared. Relax, I muttered. Just a safety precaution. If things go like you said, I'll pull them all out later. The ghost grumbled but cleared the black mist at the end of the hall. I walked up to the heavy, grime-covered door of the restroom. I inserted the key, turned it, and the door creaked open on its own. A wave of bone-chilling cold hit me. I shivered but stepped inside. The interior was strangely clean, as if someone had just scrubbed every inch of it. However, the floor was flooded with water, and the sound of a steady drip, drip, drip echoed in my ears. The room looked small from the outside, but as I looked down the row of stalls, they seemed to stretch into an infinite, dark tunnel. "Tang Ming," I shouted. My voice bounced back in a series of eerie echoes, like I was standing in a deep canyon. I didn't have time for games. I started kicking the stall doors open one by one, not caring what was hiding behind them. Bang! I kicked the first door. A mass of tangled black hair sat in the toilet. It started to squirm and rise, revealing a pair of dead, bulging eyes staring straight at me. "Sorry, wrong door. Carry on," I said, slamming it shut. I moved to the second, the third, then the fourth. Each stall held something more horrific than the last. Finally, after a dozen doors, I heard a familiar voice. I followed the sound and kicked open the next stall. Tang Ming was there. He was on his knees, frantically scrubbing a toilet bowl with a brush. Almost done, he whispered to himself. "The boss said I can leave when it's clean. Come on, keep going. You can do it. I've been looking everywhere for you." I grabbed his shoulder. "What are you doing? We need to go." He didn't even look at me. His hands kept moving in a blur. "It's dirty. So dirty. Why is it still dirty?" I accidentally stepped on the floor, leaving a faint footprint. Tang Ming shrieked and lunged at the spot, scrubbing the tile so hard I thought he'd take the skin off his palms. He was completely possessed. No matter how hard I pulled, he wouldn't budge. He even shoved me away with a strength that shouldn't have been possible for him. I considered driving a bone nail into his head to see if that would wake him up. Instead, I wound up and delivered a massive, stinging slap across his face. "Wake up, you idiot. Do you want to get out of here or not?" The slap worked. Tang Ming froze. He looked up, his eyes slowly regaining focus as he stared at me. Old Lin. I was surprised. Maybe the 10 points of ghost power I'd absorbed gave that slap a little extra kick to break the illusion. "Old Lin, you're finally here. I thought I was going to die." Tang Ming burst into tears and tried to hug me. "No time for crying," I said, dragging him out of the stall. "Let's move." But as we stepped into the main area, the ghost mist thickened. I couldn't tell which way was the exit anymore. A dark figure materialized in front of us, the supervisor of the restrooms. "Is it clean?" the ghost asked. His face was covered in bloody scars, and his neck was stretched out a full meter, bruised and purple from a rope. His head wobbled on top of his neck like a kite on a string. This was the murderer the wall ghost talked about. "It's not clean. Go back, or I'll tear your meat off, piece by piece." Tang Ming turned pale, trembling so hard he couldn't speak. "You know the toilet will never be clean," I said calmly. "You just want to trap him here until he dies of exhaustion." "Another rat," the hanging ghost grinned, his expression twisted and sick. "Good. You can stay together." His head suddenly detached and flew toward us. I didn't hesitate. I whipped a bone nail into the air and slammed it with my hammer. The nail shot out like a bullet, piercing the ghost right between the eyes. Cracks spread across his forehead. Before he could recover, I slapped a bloody sanitary pad, the sacred relic, right onto his face. The ghost let out a blood-curdling shriek as the relic began to sizzle against his skin. "Holy crap, Old Lin." Tang Ming stared at the pad in shock. That's intense." The mist ahead thinned just enough for me to see the exit. "Run," I yelled. "We can't." Tang Ming panted as we scrambled toward the door. "He'll find me. No matter where we go, he'll find me." I didn't answer. We burst out of the restroom and into the hallway. The hanging ghost's roar echoed behind us. Tang Ming looked back and saw that severed head flying through the air, closing the gap. He looked like he was about to faint. I stopped at the top of the stairs and turned around. "Why are we stopping?" Tang Ming screamed. Suddenly, the floor began to vibrate. The wallpaper along the entire corridor started peeling off in giant sheets. Thick, black blood began to ooze from every corner of the walls. In seconds, the hallway transformed into a hell's cape of gore. The hanging ghost stopped, his expression shifting from rage to pure terror. He tried to turn back toward the restroom, but the path was gone. "You're a ghost," the murderer screamed, looking toward me. "Why are you helping a human? Don't you recognize me?" A voice boomed from the walls, dripping with murderous intent. Dozens of pale, skeletal hands erupted from the blood-soaked walls. They grabbed the hanging ghost, pinning him down. "You're that." Before he could finish, he was dragged screaming into the wall itself. A thick mist swallowed the area, and the sounds of wet tearing and agonizing shrieks filled the air. My skin crawled. Then, silence. The mist vanished, and the hallway returned to its normal, grimy state. "Did they both die?" I muttered. "He's gone." The wall ghost's voice returned, sounding cold and hollow. "Erased. Forever." I was stunned. It took less than a minute for the wall ghost to finish him. If he was that powerful, why was he so afraid of my nails? He didn't offer any explanation. "It's done," the wall ghost said. "Now, pull the nails out." I kept my word and pulled the 2 bone nails from the wall. Tang Ming stood there like a statue, his brain clearly fried. He couldn't wrap his head around the fact that I had just negotiated a hit with a ghost. "Listen, friend," I said to the wall. "My buddy here isn't the brightest. If he gets into trouble over the next few days, look out for him." The wall ghost didn't respond, but I knew he was listening. We weren't friends, but in this place, a debt was a debt. "I thought we were friends," I called out to the wall. "Get lost," the wall ghost hissed back. "Fine. Talk about ungrateful." I shook my head. I'd barely pulled the nails out before he turned on me. "We're leaving." I led Tang Ming away from the restroom. As we walked, I filled him in on what had happened. Usually, if you stick to the rules and do your job, the ghosts in this place aren't allowed to touch the staff. But the hanging ghost was different. "How did you even cross him?" I asked. Tang Ming was still shaking. "I'm new, Lin Yuan. I didn't know the layout. I made one tiny mistake, and he pounced on it. He trapped me in that stall for hours." He lowered his voice, his eyes wide with horror. "I saw human skin and hair in there. I think I'm not the first worker he's cornered." It made sense. The hanging ghost was a serial killer in his past life, a man with over a dozen lives on his hands. Death hadn't changed him. It just gave him more time to perfect his craft. He loved finding loopholes in the restaurant's rules so he could satisfy his urge to kill. "Look, there are 5 days left," I said, patting his shoulder. "Be careful. I can't bail you out every time." Tang Ming nodded, then looked at me with newfound respect. "Man, those moves you pulled. You handled those 2 ghosts like they were nothing." I just shrugged and offered a small smile. I didn't have the energy to explain that I was mostly winging it. After saying goodbye, I headed back down to the main hall. The old ghost lady and her grandson weren't at the front desk, but I heard them in a side room. "Grandma, this is so good. I want more," the boy chirped. "Eat as much as you want, dear," the old woman replied, her voice dripping with eerie affection. "Grandma has plenty." I didn't stop to look. In this place, if a ghost says something is delicious, a human definitely shouldn't see it. I hung the keys back on the wall and rushed toward the dining hall. My shift was ending in 5 minutes. In the corridor, I ran into Wang Yang. He looked like a mess. He was frantic, balancing a tray with one hand, his face pale and slick with sweat. When he saw me, he looked like he'd found a life raft in the middle of the ocean. "Lin Yuan, you have to help me," he cried, grabbing my arm. "I've finished 5 deliveries, but 4 of them gave me unsatisfied ratings. If this last one isn't perfect, Pinocchio is going to kill me. We're classmates, man. You have to help." He held out a bowl of soup. It smelled foul. The meat inside was gray and falling apart, floating in a murky, greasy liquid. I hesitated, then activated my eye of analysis. "Go to the kitchen," I told him. "Find the cooking wine. Add half a spoonful, but make sure it's the strong white liquor kind. That might mask the rot." "Can't you just do it for me?" Wang Yang pleaded. "Take it to the table? Please." I shook my head, my expression turning cold. "I've given you the answer, Wang Yang. Your life is in your own hands now." I wasn't an idiot. In a world where people are treated like ingredients, kindness can be a death sentence. If I took that tray and the customer hated it, the blame would fall on me. I had to look out for myself. Wang Yang's eyes flashed with a momentary spark of resentment, but he quickly hid it. Fine, fine, I'll do it. He turned and ran toward the kitchen. Back in the restaurant, I found Lu Jiechi. She looked relieved. Did you finish? I asked. She nodded. And you? Finished 2 hours ago, I said casually. I went upstairs to check on Tang Ming. Her jaw dropped. It was only our second day, and I was already wandering around the nightmare realm like I owned the place. I could see the realization hitting her. We weren't playing the same game. She was struggling to survive, while I was just clocking in for a shift. Wang Yang is in trouble, she whispered. He lost a hand, and his ratings are bottoming out. This last delivery is his only chance. I gave him a tip, I said. The rest is up to him. Just then, Wang Yang emerged from the kitchen, pushing a cart. He was trembling so hard the dishes rattled. He approached a table where a creature with 6 eyes and no mouth sat waiting. Instead of a face, the creature had a massive, toothy maw torn open across its chest. Here is your soup, sir, Wang Yang stammered, placing the bowl down with his one good hand. The 6-eyed ghost went silent. It picked up the pot and poured the entire contents into the gaping hole in its chest. The sound of wet, grinding teeth filled the room. Wang Yang's legs were shaking like leaves. The ghost looked up, its 6 eyes unblinking. What did you put in this? Wang Yang saw that the ghost wasn't immediately violent, so he took it as a good sign. Cooking wine, sir. I made sure to add it myself. He was practically beaming, trying to take all the credit. Is that so? The ghost's eyes turned a deep, blood red. Because of your wine, this soup is ruined. A terrifying aura erupted from the ghost's chest mouth. The table cracked under the pressure, and shards of wood flew everywhere. Wang Yang froze. Stupid little rat, the ghost growled. You ruined my meal. Now, you'll be my slave. A massive hand shot out, and snatched Wang Yang up like an insect. He screamed, kicking his legs uselessly. Manager, help me. Save me. Pinocchio appeared out of the shadows, his wooden face unreadable. Wang Yang looked at him with hope, but it didn't last long. I am the manager, Pinocchio said, bowing to the 6-eyed ghost. I deeply apologize for my incompetent employee. As compensation, this rat is yours. We will also grant you a membership discount on your next visit. Wang Yang's heart shattered. As the ghost dragged him away, he turned his bloodshot eyes toward me, screaming at the top of his lungs. Lin Yuan. You framed me. I won't let you get away with this. Even if I become a ghost, I'm coming for you. I didn't blink. I told him exactly what to do. If he botched the execution or the ghost simply had different tastes, that wasn't on me. Pinocchio watched the ghost leave with its new toy, then sighed. Another hand lost. How troublesome. He turned to Lu Jiechi and me. You two did well today. Here is your pay. He flicked his wooden fingers, and several ghost coins landed in our hands. And once again, Pinocchio added, looking at me. Employee 3697 is our best worker. Here is your bonus. He handed me a small, heavy object. It was a badge shaped like a skull. With this, you have special privileges, Pinocchio explained. You may access the 2nd floor and even intervene in kitchen matters. He turned and walked away. I felt the weight of the badge in my hand and noticed the other ghost employees staring at me with pure envy. This was a powerful tool. Lin Yuan, Lu Jiechi whispered, looking at me with a hint of fear. What Wang Yang said, did you really? I didn't answer. I just walked over to the empty table where the 6-eyed ghost had been sitting. I dipped my finger into the leftover soup on the table and activated my eye of analysis. After a moment, I pulled a napkin to wipe my hand and spoke calmly. I told him to add cooking wine, I said. There was nothing wrong with the advice, but it had to be rice-based wine, not the cheap yellow grain stuff. I looked at the empty seat where Wang Yang had just been dragged to his death. Both are technically cooking wines, but the yellow grain variety has a lower alcohol content and a smell that's far too aggressive. Instead of enhancing the soup, it masks the natural aroma. Wang Yang probably tried to save a few coins, thinking all wine was the same. That tiny detail cost him his life. Pinocchio had specified white wine, but Wang Yang didn't take it to heart. I couldn't blame myself for his mistake. Lu Jiechi listened to my explanation with a complicated expression. We were classmates, after all. Watching him get dragged away like a piece of trash was heavy. But in this place, worrying about Wang Yang was a luxury. We had to worry about whether we'd even be alive tomorrow. I'm going to get something to eat, I told her. You coming? She looked dazed, so I didn't wait. I headed toward the vending machine. I needed energy. I selected a bowl of river snail rice noodles priced at 30 ghost coins and slid a 100-coin bill into the slot. The machine rattled, and the noodles dropped out. Then came the change, 20 coins. The machine had swallowed 50 of my coins. Again, yesterday, I took the loss. Today, I wasn't in the mood. I stared at the machine, my face blank. The math is wrong, I said. Shut up, the vending machine ghost rasped back. Keep complaining, and I'll take the noodles back too. I didn't argue. I simply pinned the best employee badge Pinocchio had given me onto my chest. You think that little toy scares me? The machine sneered. I'm not planning to use the badge to scare you, I replied. I have something more practical for that. I reached into my inventory and pulled out the bone-crushing hammer. With one violent swing, I smashed the glass display. Crash! Lu Jiechi caught up just in time to see the shards fly, her hand flying to her mouth in horror. She couldn't believe I was actually picking a fight with the vending machine. You're dead, the ghost roared. The machine's surface distorted into a hideous face. A massive mouth lined with rows of needle-like teeth opened wide, ready to swallow me whole. A notification flashed in my vision. You have gained 3 points of rage from the vending machine ghost. Then, another prompt appeared. You have obtained the Killer Butcher's chainsaw. A chainsaw? Return valid JSON only. Now we were talking. The ghost lunged, its metallic body creaking, but I was faster. I delivered a heavy kick that sent the machine slamming back against the wall. Ghost power, the machine gasped. It couldn't believe a rat, like me, possessed actual supernatural strength. But its shock was only beginning. I pulled out the heavy, bloodstained chainsaw. I yanked the starter cord twice. Vroom, the engine roared to life, filling the hallway with the thick, metallic stench of old blood. From Lu Jiechi's perspective, I must have looked like a total psychopath, a rain-slicked slasher straight out of a horror movie. The ghost sensed the power coming from the tool. It realized this wasn't just a prop, it was a high-level cursed object. Before it could react, I slammed the blade into its casing. The teeth tore through the metal, but instead of sparks, thick, black blood sprayed everywhere. The machine shrieked in pain and fury. It was being bullied by a human. 2 gore-covered hands reached out from behind the machine, clawing at me to tear me apart. But the moment they touched me, the ghost recoiled as if it had been electrocuted. The restaurant had rules. As long as an employee did their job and hit their targets, they couldn't be harmed. With my best employee badge, I was practically untouchable while on the clock. I ignored its screams and acted like a dedicated lumberjack. I swung the chainsaw again and again. Metal shards flew. Black blood pooled on the floor. Finally, the ghost broke. Wait. Stop, it wailed. I'll give you the change. Every cent. 2 coins popped out. What about yesterday's? I asked, the chainsaw still idling loudly. I'll return it. All of it. And my friend's money? Here, take it. A pile of coins spilled out. I finally clicked the chainsaw off. The flow of black blood stopped instantly. I picked up the stack and counted it slowly. Then I looked up with a thin smile. The math is still wrong, I said. How? I counted perfectly. The ghost protested. I just gave you 1,000 coin bill, I said casually. Bullshit. It was 100. I didn't argue. I just pulled the starter cord again. Vroom. The sound echoed deep into the ghost's soul. It was pure, shameless extortion, and the ghost knew it. It was trembling with rage, but it had no choice. I remembered wrong. The ghost hissed through gritted teeth. It was 1,000. I'll give you the rest. Another thick stack of coins appeared. Exactly 970 coins. See? I'm a reasonable man. I laughed. I wouldn't want anyone thinking I'm robbing you. Just don't get the math wrong over the next few days. I'm bad at numbers, so I might get confused again. I tucked the chainsaw away and glanced at Lu Jiechi. She stepped forward, trembling, and whispered, I want the clay pot rice. The machine stayed silent, looking battered and broken. I toyed with my hammer in one hand. Immediately, a bowl of rice, a drink, and utensils popped out. The ghost didn't say a word. It had surrendered. Back in the dorm, Lu Jiechi finally let out a breath she'd been holding. That was insane. He's a ghost. Aren't you afraid he'll get revenge? Ghosts are like people, I said, shrugging. They bully the weak and fear the strong. The more you give in, the worse they get. And if he tries to kill you, then I'll dismantle him. I was exhausted. I wanted to crash, but 2 days of grime and the stench of the restaurant were making my skin crawl. I needed a shower. I headed to the bathroom, but when I turned the handle, no water came out. I looked down at the drain. It was clogged with a thick, tangled mess of black hair. I looked back at Lu Jiechi. You're losing a lot of hair, you know. Her face went pale. That's not my hair. My stomach dropped. Another ghost had slipped in. The faucet suddenly let out a wet, hacking sound, like someone clearing a throat full of phlegm. Then, it vomited a stream of disgusting black blood and chunks of unidentifiable rotten meat. It was fine when I showered yesterday, Lu Jiechi whispered. Suddenly, a sharp knock 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 hit the door. I signaled for her to be quiet and gripped my bone-crushing hammer. I pulled the door open. Standing there was a woman in white. Her hair hung down to her waist, completely obscuring her face and her needle-thin neck. 3697, she said. Her voice was ice-cold, devoid of any human emotion. That's me, I said. My hand tightened on the hammer, even though I didn't sense immediate aggression. Without a word, the woman in white thrust a small box into my hands. I opened the box. Inside, I found a clean set of toiletries. I took care of the water issue, the woman in white said. I realized then that the tangled mess of hair clogging the drain belonged to her. Who was she exactly? A door manager? Or just a surprisingly helpful ghost sister? I stared at her, confused, but she didn't say another word. Instead, she glanced at the badge on my chest. I understood. This was a reward for being an excellent employee, ordered by Pinocchio himself. When you sleep tonight, don't open the door, she warned. It was the same advice as before. With that, she turned and vanished into the darkness of the hallway. Who was she? What did she want? Lu Jiechi whispered, peeking out from the bathroom. She was delivering care packages, I said. I tossed the box to her, pulled out a fresh towel and a bottle of shampoo, and shoved her out of the way so I could get into the shower. The water pressure returned to normal almost immediately. After 2 days in this nightmare world, I finally got to scrub the grime and blood off my skin. It felt like heaven. When I stepped out, Lu Jiechi was still rummaging through the box. She looked like she had found a chest of pirate gold. Face wash, masks, body wash, and fluffy towels. To a girl trapped in a gore-filled hellscape, these things were more valuable than food. They were a lifeline to her old life. I'm going to sleep, I told her. And remember, do not open that door. I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night to find you've let another monster in to grease its palms with my blood. Lu Jiechi nodded sheepishly and hurried into the bathroom with her new supplies. The rest of the night passed in silence. The next morning, we arrived at the restaurant early. Pinocchio was already there, perched on his wooden stand like a twisted puppet master. Employee 3699, he announced, looking at Lu Jiechi. You are still a delivery runner. 7 successful orders today to pass. Then his cold, painted eyes shifted to me. Employee 3697. Your position today is apprentice chef. You will go to the kitchen and take charge of the stove. You must prepare 2 dishes requested by guests and receive a rating of average or higher to complete your task. I froze. Lu Jiechi's eyes went wide. My stomach did a slow flip. Was this a setup? Just yesterday, he gave me a badge for excellence, and now he was throwing me into the kitchen. In this place, the mortality rate for chefs was significantly higher than for waiters. If a ghost didn't like the seasoning, they didn't leave a bad review, they ate the cook. Pinocchio didn't care about my hesitation. The rewards are high, he added cryptically, then turned and left. Lin Yuan. Lu Jiechi looked at me with pure dread in her eyes. It's just cooking, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm actually pretty good at it. Don't worry about me. Just focus on your own orders. Once she left, I followed the instructions to the back. I swapped my waiter's vest for a chef's jacket. It fit well enough, though it was just as stained and grimy as everything else in this building. A notification popped up in my mind. Asterisk, you have been assigned to table 2. Please proceed to table 2 and complete the dish according to the guest's requirements. Asterisk. I didn't overthink it. I walked out into the dining hall, but the moment I saw the guests sitting at table 2, my face went pale. It was a little girl in a rose-patterned dress and lace socks, swinging her legs and sucking on a lollipop. It was the half-ghost girl from yesterday, the one who had murdered the previous chef simply because his dish was too sweet. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead. My luck couldn't be this bad. "Human," the girl said, tilting her head. "Why are you staring at me?" I forced my heart to stop racing. "I'm your chef for today." "Oh, how brave," she giggled, leaning her chin on her hands. "A human cooking for me? Did you see what happened to the chef yesterday?" I wanted to tell her I was super brave, but looking at her innocent, terrifying smile, the joke died in my throat. My hands were shaking. "This is my menu," she said, sliding a paper toward me. "Can you make it?" I looked down. It was a caramel milk tea, a simple afternoon snack. I racked my brain. Why did the chef yesterday fail at something so basic? There had to be a catch. I looked up at her and activated my eye of analysis. When she was little, her mother made her caramel milk tea. Her mischievous older sister secretly snipped off bits of hair and sprinkled them into the drink. After drinking it, her stomach felt like it was being pierced by 1,000 needles. She was in pain all night. But later, she realized she loved the pain. It became a twisted craving. Every time since, she has secretly added hair to her tea. The agonizing pain satisfies a deep, psychological need. Since her mother disappeared, the tea is the only thing she has left of her. My skin crawled. She didn't want good tea. She wanted a drink that would make her suffer. The previous chef died because he made the tea too well. He made it sweet, which was exactly what she hated. "Am I pretty, big brother?" the girl asked, smiling. "Wait here," I said. I rushed back to the kitchen. The other ghost chefs were busy hacking up ingredients I didn't want to identify. None of them looked at me. I found the milk tea supplies easily enough. Making the tea was the easy part. Heat it, mix it, done. Then came this special ingredient. I took a pair of scissors and snipped off a chunk of my own bangs. I chopped the hair into tiny, sharp fragments and stirred them deep into the milk tea. A nearby ghost chef stopped what he was doing and stared at me in horror. "Human, are you serious?" I ignored him. I placed the bowl on a tray and walked back out. The other guests were watching table 2. They remembered the bloodbath from yesterday. Lu Jiechi was watching too, her hands clasped in prayer. I set the bowl down with a formal gesture. "Please enjoy." The girl climbed onto her chair, sniffing the tea like a curious kitten. "This looks even worse than the one from yesterday," she noted. "Appearance isn't everything," I said, my voice remarkably calm. "You won't know until you try it." She looked surprised by my confidence. "You're very sure of yourself." She popped the lollipop out of her mouth and took a deep gulp. The entire restaurant went silent. Every ghost, every trapped human, waited for her reaction. Some looked excited for the coming slaughter, others looked away. The girl's eyebrows shot up. Her eyes lit up with a terrifying intensity. She grabbed the bowl with both hands and began to chug. She drank so fast she was gasping, then used her tongue to lick every single drop from the porcelain until the bowl was spotless. The other guests were stunned. How good could it be? A look of pure, agonizing ecstasy washed over the girl's face. She clutched her stomach, moaning in a mix of pain and satisfaction. "This is it. This is the taste." She opened her eyes and looked at me with genuine wonder. "How did you know?" I coughed twice and leaned in close, whispering, "Actually, I have the same craving." The girl's face brightened as if she had finally found a friend. She laughed. "Then let me treat you to a bowl too." I could only offer a very dry, very forced smile. "No way," I said, waving my hands dismissively. I already snuck a few bites in the kitchen. "I'm stuffed." We whispered back and forth like two friends sharing a secret. The other ghosts in the restaurant watched us, their expressions a mix of confusion and irritation. They couldn't understand why this terrifying little girl was acting so friendly toward a mere human. A notification flashed in my vision. I had gained the half-ghost girl's favor. Even better, I received a reward, the murderer's feathered raiment. I checked the description. Wearing it would mask my human scent and make me appear as one of the undead. Finally, I wouldn't have to walk through this hellscape with my heart in my throat every second. There was a catch, though. It only fooled low-level ghosts. The powerful ones would see right through it. Then, the system chimed again. I gained 20 points of ghost power. Since she was a half-ghost, the rewards were doubled. Not bad at all. I'm very satisfied with your snack, the girl said. She flicked a coin onto the table. It was a 500 denomination ghost note. This little girl was a total boss. The surrounding ghosts stared at the money, their mangled faces twitching with shock. Not only was I still alive, but I was getting tipped. I saw Lu Jiechi exhale in the distance. She was clinging to me as her last hope. If I went down, she knew she was next. I bowed politely and backed away, leaving the girl to her meal. I had work to do. My eyes landed on table 7 in the far corner. The customer sitting there made my skin crawl. Half of his face was charred black, while the other half looked perfectly human. Another half-ghost. As I approached, my nerves screamed. He was staring at me with a sick, feverish intensity, drool leaking from the corner of his burnt mouth. "What can I get for you, sir?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain steady. "This is my order," he rasped, sliding a menu toward me. "Make it well. If you fail, you'll be the main course." I looked at the menu and felt my stomach drop. Lamb bone soup. I shook my head. "I'm sorry, but we don't have those ingredients in the kitchen." "Don't worry," the half-ghost said with a twisted grin. He waved his hand like a magician. Suddenly, a baby appeared on the table. She was chubby and fair, looking like a porcelain doll. She blinked her large, watery eyes at me, waving her tiny hands in the air and letting out a soft, innocent giggle. "Start cooking," the half-ghost hissed. I picked up the infant. Holding her felt like holding a lead weight. The guilt and horror pressed down on my chest until I could hardly breathe. I couldn't do this. I turned my eye of analysis on the customer. The readout was chilling. This man had been a monster in the living world, responsible for the deaths of 18 infants. When justice finally caught up to him, he was pulled into the thriller world and made a deal with a powerful entity to become a half-ghost. Now, his depravity knew no bounds. He didn't just want the baby, he wanted to eat me, too. "I won't do it," I said firmly, shaking my head. "Then you're coming with me," he replied. He wasn't surprised. He just wanted an excuse to add a human to his diet. As he stood up, I shifted the baby to one arm and gripped my bone-crushing hammer with the other. I was ready to swing. But then, a heavy hand landed on my shoulder. Pinocchio, the supervisor, appeared out of thin air. "Guest," Pinocchio said, looking at the half-ghost. "The restaurant does not serve human infants." I was stunned. Was Pinocchio actually sticking up for me? When Wang Yang was dragged away, he didn't lift a finger. Maybe I was actually becoming a star employee worth protecting. "Just because it's not on the menu doesn't mean it can't be made," the half-ghost snarled. "Please do not make things difficult for our staff," Pinocchio insisted. The half-ghost's burnt face suddenly began to glow with a dull, red heat. A suffocating aura of ghost energy flooded the room. "I know the entity on the second floor," he said with a mocking smile. "Should I call him down to have a word with you?" Pinocchio went dead silent. The atmosphere shifted instantly. "Oh, a friend from the second floor," Pinocchio said, his voice now dripping with fake politeness. "Forgive my rudeness. This human is yours to do with as you wish." Then he vanished. I stood there, speechless. That wooden-faced coward. My brief moment of respect for him evaporated. "No one can save you now," the half-ghost laughed, reaching out a massive hand to grab me. I stepped back, ready to pull the hammer, but I suddenly realized my arms were empty. The baby was gone. Wow, human babies are just like kittens. So cute. The little girl from the first table was suddenly holding the infant, teasing her and making her laugh. The half-ghost narrowed his eyes, his expression darkening. "Little girl," he growled, "didn't your mother tell you it's rude to touch someone else's food?" The girl didn't even look up. "She's mine now." The restaurant went bone-chillingly silent. Every guest froze, watching the confrontation between the two half-ghosts. "Interesting," the man sneered, his tongue licking his lips like a snake. "I've never tasted a half-ghost before. I wonder if you're as sweet as you look." "You talk too much," the girl whispered. In a flash, the man's head flew off his shoulders. Before he could even realize what happened, his body was sliced into 1,000 pieces by an invisible force. He collapsed into a pile of mangled meat on the floor. I stood there, paralyzed. I hadn't seen her move. My eye of analysis flickered, and for a split second, I saw the girl's face transform into something monstrous, a terrifying, Medusa-like visage with hair that writhed like serpents. The man's head rolled across the floor, his eyes bloodshot and screaming with rage. "You little brat. You're dead. You hear me? Dead." Suddenly, the entire restaurant began to shake. Dust and plaster rained down from the ceiling as deep cracks spiderwebbed across the walls. The guests scrambled for the exits, their faces pale with terror. "The guest from the second floor is coming down," someone screamed. The half-ghost wasn't bluffing. He really did have a powerful backer. A thick, black fog began to pour down the staircase, rotting the wooden banisters instantly. The pressure in the room became unbearable. "Huang Liang," a booming voice echoed through the hall. "I'm just trying to have a meal. What kind of trouble have you gotten into now?" "I just wanted to order a dish," the severed head cried out, his voice trembling with fear. "This rat refused to cook, and this brat stole my ingredients and destroyed my body." I stood my ground as the black mist from the second floor swirled with a heavy, suffocating silence. Every guest in the restaurant held their breath. They looked at that darkness with a mix of terror and absolute submission. It was a look I recognized. It was the same way Wang Yang used to look at the ghosts before he lost his mind. The powerful entity upstairs seemed to be weighing the situation. Finally, a raspy voice echoed through the hall. "This is the last time I stand up for you, Huang Liang. There won't be a next time." As the words fell, a withered, giant hand clawed out from the mist, reaching straight for the little girl. The force of it sent tables and chairs flying across the room. The guests winced, expecting to see the girl crushed into a bloody pulp. But in the next heartbeat, the hand jerked back as if it had touched high-voltage wire. A new figure had appeared in front of the girl. He wore a sharp suit, but his entire body, including his face, was wrapped in old, yellowed bandages. A terrifying aura radiated from him. "Miss, are you all right?" the bandaged ghost asked. The entity on the second floor gasped, his voice now trembling with genuine fear. Who are you people?" The little girl didn't even look up. She just cradled the ghost infant and smiled. "I'll call you Xiao Xiao from now on. Want to come home with Big Sister? There's another Big Sister waiting for us there." Her total indifference terrified the guest upstairs even more. "I won't interfere anymore," he shouted, his voice cracking. "I apologize for my rudeness. I'm leaving now." The black mist retreated instantly. The powerful backer was fleeing. The little girl gave a small nod to the bandaged ghost, who turned and walked toward the stairs. He was going up to finish the job. "See you next time, big brother," the girl said, blinking playfully at me. She then looked down at the severed head of the faceless ghost. He tried to speak, but she didn't give him the chance. She brought her foot down hard. His head popped like a rotten watermelon, spraying bits of skull and brain across the floor. "Welcome back anytime," she chirped as she walked out the door. Even after she left, the restaurant remained deathly quiet. Everyone stared at the staircase. A moment later, the bandaged ghost descended. In his hand, he carried a fresh, mangled head with eyes wide in a permanent stare of horror. It was the guest from the second floor. He walked through the silent room, his footsteps the only sound. When he reached me, he stopped. He handed me a small card. "Miss says if you ever need help, come here," he said. I took the card. It featured a hauntingly beautiful black and gold rose and an address. Before I could ask a question, he vanished. The restaurant returned to normal almost instantly. The guests went back to their meals as if nothing had happened. Lu Jiechi rushed over to me, grabbing my arm. "Lin Yuan, are you okay?" "Just a small scene," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did I look worried?" "But your pants are wet," she whispered. "That's just spilled soup," I lied. Soon, the closing bell rang. The guests filed out, leaving the dining hall empty and cold. Pinocchio creaked into the room. He walked over to Lu Jiechi first, praising her performance and handing her 200 ghost coins. Then, he turned his wooden face toward me. "Your performance today was pathetic," he hissed. "No reward. And because of you, the restaurant suffered losses. You will be punished." My blood boiled. The guests at the first table were satisfied with my food, I argued. But the second table was a disaster, Pinocchio countered. "That ghost didn't want food," I snapped. "He wanted me. No matter what I cooked, he wouldn't have been satisfied. Regardless, you caused damage." I'll announce your punishment tomorrow. Go rest. He turned to leave, but paused at the corner. And remember, Lin Yuan, you're an employee here, but you're also just a rat. Know your place. It was a blatant warning. I didn't say anything, but inside, I was fuming. One day, if I get strong enough, I'm going to buy this damn restaurant and chop Pinocchio into firewood. Lin Yuan, cheer up, Lu Jiechi said, holding her coins. I'll buy you dinner. Anything you want. I shook my head. No thanks. Someone else is treating me. She looked confused. There was no one else left. I walked out of the restaurant and headed straight for the vending machine in the hallway. It had mostly healed from the last time I saw it open. I didn't say a word. I just pulled out my bone-crushing hammer and started swinging. Asterisk bang. 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 Asterisk. Glass shattered. Metal groaned and dented. The vending machine ghost screamed in rage. You grandson of a bitch. What did I do now? What's wrong with you? You didn't do anything. I grunted, swinging again. I'm just in a bad mood. I need to vent. Thanks, old friend. Thanks. I'll kill you. Don't think I'm easy to bully. It roared, trying to fight back. I kicked it hard, pinning it back into the corner, and kept hammering. I realized my ghost power had grown again. The machine couldn't even put up a fight anymore. A few days ago, it played with me like a toy. Now it was my punching bag. When I was finally done, I felt much better. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and patted the mangled machine. My arms are sore. Give me a bottle of water. My throat's dry. The machine let out a strangled sob of pure frustration. I went back to the dorm and fell into a deep sleep. I knew Pinocchio's punishment wouldn't be easy, but I needed my strength. The next morning, the alarm clock ghost shrieked me awake. Lu Jiechi was already up, looking pale. Did you sleep at all? I asked. I had nightmares, she whispered, hugging her knees. I dreamed you didn't come back today, that I was all alone here. She wasn't in love with me. I was just her only anchor in this hell. You must be terrified too, she added. The punishment? Not really, I said, stretching. I slept like a baby. A knock came at the door. I opened it to find Pinocchio standing there. Follow me, he said. Where? Just follow. He turned and walked away. Lu Jiechi looked like she wanted to say something, but the words caught in her throat. I gave her a small nod and stepped out into the hallway. Whatever was coming, I had to face it. The conflict didn't actually lie with Lu Jiechi. Pinocchio just needed a scapegoat, and in this place, a lowly human like me was the perfect candidate. He led me to a room in the back of the kitchen and handed me a slip of paper. I unfolded it. There was nothing on it but an address and a name. Ingredient number 8. What is this? I asked, confused. This is your punishment, Pinocchio said, his wooden face expressionless. It is also your job for today. You will leave the restaurant, follow this address to the supermarket, and bring ingredient number 8 back. Do this, and your mistake is forgiven. You'll even receive a handsome reward. Buying groceries? I looked up. By myself. Pinocchio nodded his wooden head. I let out a cold laugh. Let's be real. How dangerous is this? In the past, any employee who cost the restaurant money had to go out and fetch ingredients to make up for the loss. Pinocchio replied. You are the 55th. Of the 54 who went before you, 5 came back alive. Less than a 10% survival rate. And if I refuse? Immediate execution, Pinocchio said flatly. I suggest you choose the former. If you resist, your meager ghost power won't save you. Follow the rules, and you at least have a hope of returning. Ingredient number 8 is vital. It's for a recipe requested by a noble guest on the 2nd floor. If you bring it back, your term of service ends early. You'll be promoted to a supervisor position and gain the full protection of the restaurant. The reward was tempting, but in this world, the better the prize, the deadlier the trap. Still, I didn't have a choice. I shrugged. If I say no, I die now. If I say yes, I might die later. I guess I'm going shopping. The heavy back door creaked open. It wasn't time for business yet, and the world outside was a hazy, gray void. A bone-chilling wind rushed in. Go, Pinocchio commanded. I looked at the slip of paper. It says I can take the bus. Does the restaurant cover the fare? Pinocchio didn't answer. Fine. I had to pay my own way. Wrapped in my thin shirt, I stepped out of the restaurant. The door slammed shut behind me instantly. I looked up at the leaden sky. This was it, My first real look at the horror world outside the walls of the Ean Spring restaurant. It was early, so I didn't see many ghosts near the back exit. To be safe, I ducked into an alley and pulled on the killer's raincoat. Immediately, my human scent was masked, replaced by a thick, murderous aura. If I walked out there as a human, I'd be torn apart before I even reached the bus stop. The raincoat was my only real insurance. I emerged onto the main road. The horror world looked strangely familiar, high-rise buildings and paved streets, but it was a corpse of a city. Abandoned cars littered the roads. Piles of rotting meat sat on the sidewalks, attracting swarms of crows and vultures that tore at the remains. It looked like the end of the world. I walked past blurred shadows and shambling, zombie-like spirits. They glanced at me with hollow eyes, but sensing the foul energy from my coat, they looked away and kept moving. Without this gear, I'd be a snack. I followed the signs to the bus station and sat on a bench. An old man sat nearby, leaning on a cane and dozing off. He looked perfectly human, but I knew better. He was likely a half-ghost, similar to the little girl I'd met before. I thought about looking her up for help, but her address was 20 stops past my destination. Too far. I kept my mouth shut to avoid blowing my cover. Soon, a woman arrived carrying a baby and a grocery bag. The infant's skin was a sickly gray, and it was giggling while playing with a severed human head. The woman's bag was filled with chopped-up limbs. I could see a wedding ring still clinging to one of the fingers. It hit me then. The horror world had its own society. They had lives and jobs. The only difference was that their poultry was us. The bus arrived. Number 404. The old man and the woman stood up. I followed. As they boarded, they tossed ghost coins into the fare box. I steadied my nerves and dropped my coins in too. I turned to find a seat, but the ghost driver's voice stopped me cold. Wait. My body went stiff. I turned slowly. The driver had a pale, bloated face, and his cracked lips twisted into a jagged grin. You paid too much. I exhaled quietly. Keep it. I have plenty. He didn't argue. He shut the door, and the bus lurched forward. There weren't many passengers. Aside from the old man and the woman, there were 4 others. 2 were translucent spirits. One was a physical ghost with a jagged seam running down his face and steel nails driven into his skull. But it was the last passenger that made my heart skip a beat. He was wearing a clean suit, his hair slicked back, staring out the window with a bored expression. He didn't have a trace of ghost energy. He was a human. A real, living player. Why wasn't he afraid? How could he sit here so calmly? The old man and the woman noticed him too. They eyed him hungrily at first, but then their expressions shifted to something like wariness, and they looked away. Even the ghost baby reached out toward the man, but the mother pulled its hand back sharply, as if touching him was dangerous. I realized then that there were rules to this world I still didn't understand. On Earth, I'd heard stories about national-level veteran players, people who treated these nightmares like a playground to harvest rewards. To us newbies, every day was a desperate struggle to survive. To them, this was just a game. That man in the suit had clearly mastered the essence of this game. He moved between the horror world and reality with total ease. I could only sigh inwardly as the bus slowed down. The automated voice crackled over the speakers. Next stop, Shuayuan Cemetery. Please exit in an orderly fashion. The following stop will be the Yellow Springs Hotel. The man in the suit stood up. As he passed me, he glanced down and caught my eye. He gave me a small, knowing smile and stepped out the back door. I was spotted. I let out a bitter, silent laugh. I wasn't entirely surprised. This feather cloak I was wearing wasn't a high-level ghost artifact. Any powerful ghost, or a veteran player, could see right through the disguise. Over the next few stops, passengers got on and off. Luckily, none of the other ghosts noticed me. They brushed past my seat, oblivious to the human hidden beneath the feathers. Suddenly, I felt a tug. Someone was pulling the hood off my head. I reacted instantly, slamming my hand down to hold the hood in place and spinning around. It was the ghost child. He was staring at my cloak with intense curiosity, his tiny, pale hand reaching out to grab it again. His mother sat beside him, stroking his forehead. She saw what he was doing, but she didn't move to stop him. I didn't hesitate. I pulled out my bone-crushing hammer. Black soot from the cursed weapon flaked off, landing on the bus seat like ash. Control your child, I said. My voice was low, rasping, and filled with a cold, murderous edge. The woman froze. She realized I wasn't an easy target. She quickly grabbed the boy's hand and forced him back into his seat. I let out a slow breath. That was close. I almost lost my cover over a curious kid. I checked the stop list. 2 more stations until my destination. My heart hammered against my ribs. The bus was getting more crowded, and every new passenger was a new threat. At the next stop, half the passengers cleared out. The cramped, suffocating interior suddenly felt empty and cold. I felt a wave of relief. The next stop was mine. I was almost safe. Only one passenger boarded. He had long, matted hair that dragged on the floor, soaking wet. His skin was a sickening, translucent white. Water poured off him in heavy streams, drenching the bus floor in seconds. The ghost driver didn't care. He just shut the doors and pulled away. A water ghost. I watched him closely, guessing he had drowned. He didn't look for a seat. Instead, he tilted his head back and sniffed the air. Beneath that curtain of wet hair, a horrific face twisted into a gruesome grin. I smell a rat, he hissed. My face went pale. I looked up, and his bulging eyes were fixed directly on me. His mouth split open, dripping with salty, stagnant water. His gaze was pure greed. I was caught. My body went rigid, muscles tensing for a fight. But the water ghost didn't scream for the others. He just sat down nearby, his eyes never leaving me. He was watching his prey, making sure I wouldn't run. 5 minutes later, the bus screeched to a halt. My stop. I stood up immediately, but the water ghost lunged, blocking the aisle. Sit back down, he sneered. I stared at him, my eyes cold. This is my stop. I said, sit down, little rat. Are you deaf? The word rat echoed through the quiet bus. Every head turned. Every ghost on that bus shifted their gaze toward me. The atmosphere turned heavy and suffocating. This bastard wasn't going to let me go. I gripped the handle of my hammer until my knuckles turned white. I wasn't afraid of him, but if I started a fight here, my identity would be broadcast to the entire bus. The ghost driver looked back at us. Without a word, he reached over and slammed the back door shut again. The other passengers began to hiss and murmur. They knew there was a human among them. The water ghost leaned in, his stench of rot filling my lungs. Rat, one last time. Sit down. I didn't move. If I sat down, I'd miss my stop. I had no idea what would happen to me if I stayed on this bus. Just as I was about to swing the hammer, someone tapped the water ghost on the shoulder. He spun around, snarling at a dark figure standing behind him. He belongs to me, the figure said. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. Yours? The water ghost laughed. What proof do you? Before he could finish, the dark figure's hand shot out. 5 sharp claws dug into the water ghost's face. Black blood sprayed everywhere. The water ghost didn't even have time to scream before the moisture in his body began to hiss and evaporate. Steam billowed off him as a terrifying, white-hot flame erupted from his chest. His pale flesh turned black and charred in seconds. With one final, sickening crunch, the dark figure crushed the water ghost's skull. The charred, headless corpse slumped to the floor, breaking apart into chunks of black coal. The dark figure turned his gaze to the driver. Open the door, he commanded. The driver looked intimidated. He didn't argue. The back door hissed open. Before I could say a word, the figure grabbed my arm and pulled me off the bus. We stood on the side of the road as the bus disappeared into the gloom. Only then did I realize who my savior was. It was the burned ghost from the restaurant, the one I had given the tequila to. You're very brave, he said, the terrifying aura around him fading. I gave him a weak, bitter smile. I didn't have much of a choice. I messed up, and the restaurant is forcing me to buy ingredients. If I don't finish the task, I'm dead anyway. I was still shaking internally. He had killed that water ghost with one hand. The same water ghost that had the entire bus on edge was nothing to him. I couldn't even imagine how powerful this guy actually was. Regardless, thank you, I said sincerely. He didn't acknowledge the thanks. What are you looking for? I handed him the list. He scanned it, his eyes narrowing slightly. What is it? I asked. Ingredient number 8 can only be found at the Wangliang supermarket, he said. That's where I'm heading. But the owner there is difficult. And number 8 isn't a normal item. You won't be able to buy it with ghost coins alone. I blinked. If coins won't work, what will? He shook his head. That's up to you. He stepped aside and pointed down the dark street. Go 100 meters this way, then turn the corner. You'll see it. I knew he couldn't help me with the actual purchase. The fact that he'd saved my life was already more than I could have asked for. I thanked him one last time. That tequila meant a lot to me, he said quietly. And I don't like owing favors, especially to humans. I smiled. I understand. A notification flashed in my vision. You have gained +10 favorability with the burned ghost. You have received Tai Sui meat, X2. Tai Sui meat. I remembered hearing about this. It was a rare, fleshy substance that ghosts couldn't resist. In the human world, it was called meat Ganoderma, a legendary ingredient for immortality that people spent fortunes on, though most of it was fake. But here, this was the real deal. The burned ghost walked away, leaving me alone. I tucked the meat into my bag, took a deep breath, and headed down the street. 5 minutes later, I rounded the corner. I saw the supermarket. It was huge, standing like a tombstone in the middle of a desolate street. Old newspapers swirled in the wind, dancing across the cracked pavement. Every other shop was boarded up, their signs rotting. Only this one stayed open. The interior looked bleak. Dim lights flickered, casting long, shivering shadows across the aisles. It was the kind of place that made your skin crawl before you even stepped inside. I didn't hesitate. I walked through the sliding doors. The moment my foot hit the linoleum, a system notification chimed in my brain. A passive mission had been triggered. The system detected a hidden, mergeable ghost fragment in the area. I had 24 hours to find and merge with it. To help me, the system granted me a special physique, the Inyan cover. It allowed me to merge with up to 3 ghosts below A+ rank. If I succeeded, I'd get a random grade treasure box, anything from bronze to diamond. If I failed, the system would confiscate every ghost item I owned. I froze. I hadn't even started shopping, and I already had a gun to my head. Losing my ghost items meant losing my life in a place like this. I was already committed, so I pushed deeper into the store. The place was a mess. It was far quieter than the Ean Spring restaurant, but much filthier. Goods were piled haphazardly on shelves, and flies buzzed in thick clouds over rotting produce. A middle-aged man sat behind the front counter. He was slumped in a recliner, clutching a liquor bottle, eyes glazed and drunken. I couldn't tell if he was human or ghost. "Boss," I said, "I'm looking for an ingredient." He cracked one eyelid and sneered at me. "A filthy rat," he barked. "Strip off that ugly disguise and get out of my shop." I winced. My killer's raincoat wasn't fooling him for a second. I pulled the hood back inside. I wasn't leaving that easily. "Boss, I just want to buy one thing and go." I tried again. He pointed a shaky finger at a gap on a nearby shelf. "See that empty spot? Say one more word, and I'll hang your head right there." I frowned. The burned ghost was right. This guy was a nightmare. With an attitude like that, it was a miracle he had any customers at all. Suddenly, a woman stepped out from the back. She didn't say a word. She just grabbed a fruit knife from the counter and plunged it straight into the man's neck. He collapsed, twitching on the floor. I jumped back, my heart hammering. What the hell? Was this a domestic dispute or a murder? "So sorry about that," the woman said. She looked to be about 30, with a kind face and a gentle voice. "I'm the boss's wife. This old fossil doesn't know how to talk to people. He scares away all the business." She smiled at me. If it wasn't for the blood spraying from her husband's throat, I would have thought she was a normal, friendly lady. "We don't care if you're human or ghost. A guest is a guest. What can I get you?" Before I could answer, the husband bolted upright. He ripped the knife out of his neck like it was a splinter. Then, he grabbed the blade and slammed it into the top of his wife's skull. She didn't even flinch. The smile stayed plastered on her face. "You crazy bitch," the man roared. "Trying to start a rebellion?" She didn't argue. She just grabbed him by the collar and dragged him into a dark back room. A second later, she reached under the counter, pulled out a heavy axe, and followed him inside. The sounds that followed were horrific. Thuds, screams, the wet, tearing sound of flesh being ripped apart. It went on for 2 solid minutes. Then, the wife stepped out. She was drenched in fresh blood, but her expression was as polite as a librarian's. "Sorry you had to see that. she said, smoothing her hair. But you know how men are. If you don't discipline them, they forget who runs the house. I forced a smile and nodded quickly. Makes sense. Perfectly reasonable. Anyway, she said. What are you buying? I handed her the list. When she saw ingredient number 8, her eyebrows shot up. She looked at me, then back at the paper. You're a human, she said. What do you want with this? I work for the Ean Spring restaurant, I explained. They sent me. She let out a sharp, cold laugh. Then they've signed your death warrant. Even if I sold this to you, a human couldn't carry it back. It's dangerous, it's hard to control, and more likely than not, it'll end up controlling you instead. My stomach dropped. Was this an ingredient or a monster? Besides, she added, sitting down and pouring a glass of water. I won't sell it to you. It's too precious. Those vultures at the restaurant send a new employee every few weeks to try and get it. You can't buy this with ghost coins. I'll die if I go back empty-handed, I pleaded. Is there anything else I can trade? She looked me up and down with a playful, hungry glint in her eyes. You've got a nice build, kid, but I'm not interested in that. And human meat isn't worth much around here. I went silent. I realized then that the hardest part of this mission wasn't the journey, it was the transaction. Pinocchio probably expected me to fail. Suddenly, a massive crash echoed from the back of the store. Goods flew through the air. Shelves toppled over like dominoes. The whole aisle was being trashed. The backroom door burst open. The husband charged out, covered in wounds and brandishing a bone-cleaving cleaver. That damn thief again, he screamed. I'll gut him. I'll chop him into pieces. He vanished into the aisles, swinging wildly. A few minutes later, he came back looking defeated, his face bruised and his teeth gritted in rage. Idiot, the wife hissed. Stop making a mess. If you were half as tough as you act, you would have caught it by now. She shoved him aside and checked the shelves. Her face twisted into a snarl. He stole 8 more items. That's 500 ghost coins gone. I watched them, a plan forming in my mind. A habitual thief was haunting the shop. Maybe I can help, I suggested. The husband spat on the floor. Get lost, brat. Don't get in my way. But the wife stepped forward. She stared at me for a long moment, a calculating smile creeping across her lips. Tell you what, she said. If you catch that thief for us, I'll give you ingredient number 8. Deal, I said immediately. I didn't have any other choice. The husband scoffed, but he didn't stop her. Just then, a passing ghost stopped at the counter. Hey, give me 2 portions of donkey skin. Get it yourself, the husband barked. You don't have hands? The ghost cursed and walked out. The wife immediately buried her knife into her husband's back again. Do you want to keep this shop open or not? She screamed. I ignored them and turned toward the dark aisles. I had a thief to catch. I left the bickering couple behind and headed deep into the aisles. This supermarket was massive, with hundreds of shelves stretching into the shadows. As I walked, I noticed how filthy the place was. Thick layers of dust covered the products, and half the stock was scattered across the floor in a messy heap. It looked like nobody had cleaned this place in years. Suddenly, I heard a rustle. My ears twitched, catching the exact location of the sound. I gripped my bone-crushing hammer, spun around, and prepared to swing with everything I had. Whoa, brother. Calm down, a voice hissed from the darkness. I froze. That wasn't the raspy voice of a ghost. I smelled something familiar, the scent of a living human. A man stepped out from behind a stack of crates, holding his hands up. I'm a player, just like you, he said with a nervous grin. The name's Chin Yuan. I was sent here for the horror game too. I lowered my hammer slightly, but kept my guard up. I looked at the chaotic mess surrounding him. You're the stock clerk here? If the boss saw this mess, he'd skin you alive. Given how the owner handled his own wife, I couldn't understand how Chun Yuan was still breathing. Heh, it's the National Protection Mechanism, Chun Yuan whispered, scratching his head. The boss and his wife only check the aisles once a week. I slack off for 5 days and spend the last 2 cleaning up. It's enough to get by. I was stunned. So this was how the system protected players? It felt incredibly loose. No wonder the couple ignored the general filth and only got angry about the specific items the thief messed with. Thinking about my own life made me bitter. Back at the Ean Spring restaurant, I was being bullied by the chef, hunted by ghosts in my sleep, and stared down by perverted customers. One wrong word or a slow delivery meant a gruesome death. Compared to me, Chen Yuan was living in a luxury greenhouse. I was forced into this game, I said, my face darkening. Chen Yuan looked at me with genuine pity. Man, I feel for you. I've only done 2 games, but everyone knows the forced entry players don't get the protection mechanism. Your death rate is insane. If you survive, it's because your ancestors are watching over you. He glanced toward the front counter where the bosses were still arguing and lowered his voice even further. Look, I heard your deal with the lady. My advice, get out while you can. You can't catch that thief. And even if you do, she won't give you ingredient number 8. My heart sank. Why not? Are you playing dumb? Chen Yuan scanned me from head to toe. You're a human trying to cut a deal with a ghost. To be honest, the management at your restaurant screwed over the boss lady a while back. She hates your workplace. She wouldn't sell to you even if she had the stock. The weight in my chest grew heavier. Pinocchio hadn't mentioned any of this. He had sent me straight into a trap. I closed my eyes for a moment, weighing my options. When I opened them, my resolve hadn't changed. Tell me about the thief, I said. Chen Yuan blinked in surprise. Did you hear a word I said? I can't go back empty-handed, I replied firmly. I have my own ways. Chen Yuan sighed and shook his head. Fine. He showed up about a week ago. He only steals the expensive stuff. So far, he's eaten over 8,000 ghost coins worth of stock. At this rate, the shop will go bust. He didn't sound worried. He only had 2 days left on his shift. Once he collected his reward and left, he didn't care if the supermarket burned down. Can't the owners catch him? I asked. They don't seem weak. The thief isn't aggressive, but he's tricky, Chen Yuan explained. Every time the bosses get close to catching him, they suddenly go into a trance. They just stand there like idiots while the thief finishes his meal and strolls away. By the time they snap out of it, he's gone. It's some kind of mental interference ability. Also, I think he's injured. His appetite is getting bigger every day. He eats, hides in a corner to sleep, and comes back when he's hungry again. I thought about it. If I could catch this thief, I might be able to solve 2 problems at once. When does he usually show up? He's greedy, Chen Yuan said. He comes out at least 3 times a day. I bet he'll show his face tonight. Good. I'll wait for him tonight. I had until 6 in the morning to get that ingredient back to the restaurant. Tonight was my only shot. You don't even have to hide, Chen Yuan added. At first he was shy, but now he realizes nobody can touch him. He walks out like he owns the place. I nodded and walked back to the front of the store. The couple had finally stopped fighting. The wife pulled a dagger out of her own chest and wiped it clean, giving me a chilling smile. Find anything? She asked. Not yet, I said. But your employee gave me some leads. I'll make my move tonight. Ah, little Chun, she giggled, looking toward the aisles. He's such a hard-working, dedicated boy. Every time I check, his shelves are perfectly organized. I stared at her. If she saw him back there eating instant noodles and playing games, she wouldn't be laughing. The protection mechanism was truly a miracle for some people. Even the angry husband seemed to change his tune. Catch that thief, and we'll sell you whatever you want. Heck, we might even give it to you for free. I knew they were lying, but I played along, putting on a face of pure determination. I'll do my best. Evening fell quickly. The street outside was swallowed by a thick, suffocating darkness. The metal shutters of the supermarket rattled shut, and the owners vanished into the back rooms. Chen Yuan finally emerged from the aisles. He walked behind the counter, grabbed some high-end snacks and a bottle of beer, and started feasting. Why didn't you come out during the day? I asked. That's work time, he mumbled through a mouthful of food. If I leave my assigned area during work hours, the protection mechanism breaks. Without it, the bosses would tear me apart. There are rules, man. No matter how hot it gets or how hungry I am, I stay in those aisles until the doors lock. He looked content, but I couldn't relax. I leaned against a shelf, my eyes fixed on the dark corners of the store. Somewhere in this building, a hungry ghost was waking up, and I was the only thing standing between him and his next meal. I realized then that I hadn't studied the mechanics of this horror game nearly enough. Chen Yuan looked like a simple, lazy guy, but he understood the protection rules perfectly. That was exactly why he had managed to survive here for so long while staying so relaxed. A loud crash echoed from the darkness. A shelf toppled over, sending products flying across the floor. The noise was deafening in the silent store. Chen Yuan took a long swig of his beer and wiped his mouth. "The gluttonous ghost is out," he muttered. I looked at him, surprised by his lack of movement. "Aren't you coming with me to catch it?" Chen Yuan put down a chicken wing and shook his head. "You can't catch him. He's gone in the blink of an eye. Even if you do grab him, that ghost can possess you, mess with your head, and then vanish anyway. The owners have tried to trick him a dozen times. I've seen it all. As long as he doesn't bother me, I'm not looking for trouble." He picked up a grilled sausage and started eating again. I didn't say anything else. I turned away and walked toward the back of the store. Inside the aisles, the thief heard my footsteps. I caught a glimpse of a shadow darting away before it vanished completely. I looked down at the floor. It was a mess of torn packaging and half-eaten food. The ghost was a picky eater. He only went for the most expensive items on the shelves. "Hey brother, I've got something tasty here," I called out into the dark. "Why don't you come out? Let's be friends." Back at the counter, I heard Chen Yuan snort. He rolled his eyes at my attempt. "If that actually works, I'll eat crap while standing on my head," he shouted. There was no response from the darkness. I smiled to myself and opened my inventory. I pulled out a piece of Tai Sui meat and placed it carefully on the floor. To my human senses, the meat didn't look or smell like anything special. But the system said it was legendary, so I decided to trust it. The moment the Tai Sui meat hit the air, everything changed. An invisible scent began to spread through the aisles. It was a smell that no ghost could resist, something that drove them into a primal frenzy. Deep in the shadows, a pair of eyes snapped open. I heard a rustle. Something was being pulled toward me, unable to fight the attraction. I turned my head toward the sound. A dark figure slowly emerged from the gloom. It was a translucent, shifting spirit. Its most terrifying feature was its body, which was covered from head to toe in blood-red eyes. They all blinked at once, staring at me. I stayed calm and gave a friendly wave. "Hello there." The creature ignored me. Its gaze was locked on the floor. In a flash of movement, the Tai Sui meat was in its hands. Without a second of hesitation, the ghost shoved the meat into its mouth and swallowed it whole. All 9 of those eerie red eyes squinted in pure bliss. It looked like it was experiencing heaven. "You ate my food," I said, keeping my voice steady. "So, can we be friends now?" The ghost looked at me. "Idiot," it rasped. The voice was filled with deep mockery. It turned around, ready to vanish back into the shadows. I sighed loudly, putting on a look of lonely disappointment. "That's a shame. I just wanted a friend. I have so much more of this Tai Sui meat on me. Now I don't know who to give it to." The gluttonous ghost froze. It turned back, its eyes narrowing. "You have more." "I've got plenty," I said, trying to look like a wealthy benefactor. "Do you want to be friends with a rich guy like me? I can keep you full forever." The ghost wasn't buying it. It let out a cold, raspy laugh. "You humans are the most cunning creatures alive. Don't take me for a fool. You don't want to be friends. You want to catch me. Since you have good food on you, I'll just kill you and take it. Why should I waste my breath talking to you?" I froze. I stared at the many-eyed monster in front of me. Honestly, he had a point.